so we had to use a whole piece of paper just for
I know.
adjourn.
I didn't, that's why I didn't print it.
Thank you.
We'll call to order the CRA meeting for December 13th, 2021. First order of business is approval of minutes from October 18th, 2021.
Move to approve the minutes as submitted.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. This time I'd open it up to citizens to be heard. Seeing none, item 4.1.
Amanda Thompson, CRA Director, approve the proposed 2022 Community Redevelopment Agency Board meeting schedule and adopt Resolution 21-03.
Anyone have an issue?
Nope.
Councilmember Beckman?
Had a question about why no meeting scheduled in April?
I believe that's based on your council schedule, and there's only one meeting, and I don't know if it's earlier
Okay.
or later, but it would have created like a short time between meetings.
Okay, thanks.
Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the agenda item 4.1.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
I am looking forward to spending Valentine's Day with you, though.
Me too.
Ratify and confirm the contract between,
He has to read the
Oh, sorry.
resolution.
I'll read this one. Resolution number 21-03, a resolution of the Community Redevelopment Agency of the City of Clearwater, Florida, adopting the CRA 2022 meeting schedule, providing an effective date.
No one from the public is here, so no one will speak. Do I have a motion for the resolution?
Motion to approve Resolution 21-03.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. 4.2.
thank you, ratify and confirm the contract between the Community Redevelopment Agency and Kokalakis Contracting, authorizing an increase to the contract by $52,809 for costs associated with the installation of the America's Everglades exhibit. So if you will recall, back in May of 2021, you all approved a program budget of $500,000 for the purposes of establishing a 3-year arts exhibition, gallery space programming with the Clyde Butcher Gallery. The first of that is the Everglades exhibit, and we refurbished the existing gallery space in the main library, built out a new gallery in the atrium. And what we found once we started work was that the light levels were so high that we needed to do some additional work with the vinyl and all the graphics in order to lower the light levels. We also had to raise the height of the walls to protect the photography. So those are the increase in costs.
Any questions for Ms. Thompson? Councilmember Beckman?
I just wanted to know, do we get to keep everything we purchased? The blackout film, the walls, the TV monitor, all that stuff that was purchased, we get to keep? It's not part of that setup
Oh, yes.
organization,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
We're keeping everything? Great.
And the vinyl's designed so that you can just, the letters are on top, so we just swap out the letters going forward.
Fantastic, thanks.
Councilmember Albritton?
I just want to make a comment. This is a great exhibit. I've never seen a better exhibit in the library, and I hope that we can continue this and keep something going in here all the time now. And I'm glad to have this all the way through May, and I'm telling anybody that hasn't seen it, come on down and see it because it's amazing.
Thank you.
Do we have any idea how many people have come to see the exhibit?
We do not yet. We know that the opening was close to 400, and that is something we are figuring out in December is the best way to count that. We might end up, there's stands you can get that count. You use them usually for bike ped counts, like on trails. So we're looking to the cost of those and where we could put them so we don't just get people going to the restroom, but where else can we put it in the exhibit to get a good count?
I think it would be good to have that. I mean, we need to quantify how many people are actually coming through.
I agree. We can also go back and review security footage, but that's pretty time intensive.
That's
so, yeah,
pretty
we're looking
arduous.
for solutions to count.
All right. Any other questions? I have a motion.
Move to approve item 4.2. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. 4.3.
So this is a update on how we've managed to implement our strategy this year. I do want to start by saying that Howard Smith was supposed to be a big part of this presentation today. Got a call a few moments ago that his father's in the hospital. So he was not able to make it, but he has done extraordinary work this year. So I'm really praying for his family, but I'm also sad that you're not going to be able to hear from him directly because he spent so much time working with our business owners and tenants. So with that today, I'd like to share a few stories that illustrate our work in 2021. In many ways, this has been a tougher year than 2020, just because of the ongoing pandemic, right, and supply shortages and labor shortages. We're not immune to that, especially since much of our work becomes visible through other people, right, through other departments and through other partner agencies. I'm just really proud of the way our team, our small but mighty team, and our city colleagues and our community partners have really come together to make downtown better. So just as a reminder, these are our marching orders, right? The community's adopted vision of the 2018 plan here that will be the urban core and heart of the city. It's a place of live, working, and playing, and we'll continue to focus on creation of a high-quality public realm, right, and regular person language, right, all the public spaces that we gather together. And of course, every day, and sometimes waking up in the middle of the night, we're asking ourselves, are we changing the perception of downtown? Because as we know, our biggest barrier to change is a negative perception of downtown. And if we want people to spend their time and dollars and investors, they have to feel like this is a place that is worthy of that. We are geographically restricted. These are the boundaries here. And there are four main ways that we facilitate change. And I know you've heard this all before, but for our viewing audience at home, and they understand why we do what we do. We do not run businesses directly. We don't deliver general city services. But we do these four things to help restore the functioning of a private market. And that's really the goal of a CRA. In a regular situation, we wouldn't be needed, but there's things that have to be fixed in order to encourage private investment. We have several target audiences depending on the program, which are all listed here. And we recognize that all of these groups, everyone on this slide has to be involved if downtown's going to be successful and have sustainable success. So a lot of our work is figuring out how to partner with these different groups and empower them to make change. Again, big shout out to engineering and planning and codes enforcement, public comms, right, who all work with us to make this happen, and our business owners as well. So the three areas that we work in to change perception, these are just broad containers: creating and sharing positive stories, increasing investor confidence, and of course placemaking and place keeping. We're always doing work on a continuum, which means we have to have activity now, right, increasing foot traffic, but we also have to have sustainability over the long term, which is more of our housing projects. So we're always thinking, what do we have to do today? What are we doing today to prepare for tomorrow? And really what we're focused on is how do we balance flexibility, right, but also transparency and being accountable to the taxpayers to reduce the risk of investment, right, to make this an environment that's less risky. So looking at the numbers, we received tax increment financing from the city and from the county, roughly split 50-50. County funds are restricted to capital improvements and land acquisition. So when we think about programs like Clyde Bookshire, our marketing programs, staff expenses, that all comes from city TIF. And the county TIF is on those tangible things that you can touch. You saw a significant increase in revenue. This was due to property purchases, Apex 1100 and the Nolan Apartments coming online. I anticipate that after this year, it's gonna remain relatively flat because we don't have any major apartment complexes that'll be coming out of the ground in the next year. Right now, we have $5,750,000 that has been encumbered but not spent. So you've awarded to grant programs or a pending reimbursement. We anticipate $2,650,000 coming in 2022 once we sell Fire Station 45 site and the 115 South MLK site. We will receive revenue from those land sales. I think the other big thing I would point out here is that it takes programs and staff to spend money. So it's harder than you think, right? Unless you're spending a bunch of money at once, right, in a big grant or buying property that, in the amounts that we give our grants, right, $25,000, $50,000, right, we have to generate a good amount of interest in order to spend what we're pulling in here. So 3 stories today that I think illustrate our success and strategy. The mural program. So one reason for creating and sharing positive stories, art is really the core of how we do that. And the reason being is that it generates, one, a lot of media. Compared to when we had new businesses, all like the 6 or 7 new businesses that came out, we got 2 articles, right? For our mural program, we get 5. For wearable art, we get 5 TV and news articles. For Clyde Butcher, right, it's more in the realm of 9. So art is something that people keep coming back to again and again that are interesting stories to share. We have 7 new murals in downtown since 2018. We completed 3 this year, thanks to Chris Hubbard and his work with us on that. The total cost for these 3 murals was $52,480. We intentionally choose designs that are complex and contain stories that are authentic to this community. Of course, at the top you see a really whimsical, kind of dreamy one with an alligator, which is, symbol of Florida. And then at the bottom, those are 3 native Florida plants that are shown on this. At its most basic level, murals reduce visual blight, which is part of our mission. This was an ugly warehouse right on a vacant corner at our busiest intersection. And people drove by it for years, and I don't think looked at it twice. The second that we put a mural up there, we attracted 2 farmers markets, which we have struggled for several years to have markets in downtown. So we got Market Marie, and then we also got the Hispanic farmers market. And both of those were part of our partnership with Amplify Clearwater to help them through the permitting process and received city co-sponsorship. This is also on the Pinellas Trail, so now we have 2 murals on the trail helping to activate that. This provided content for the Clearwater Arts Alliance to do tours in person. We also launched our online art tours through our website. We also launched, as part of the website too, an Artist Seeking Walls and Wall Seeking Artist. And since we've started murals, not just the city ones, we've had 4 private property owners put murals on their properties as well. So we know that it's inspiring other artists or other property owners to beautify their property. So I'll just say in closing that high-quality art in public spaces is an effective short-term and long-term strategy for reducing blight, encouraging investment, and generating positive stories. And we're going to keep pushing forward with augmented reality for our existing murals and exploring immersive lighting and projection mapping to build upon our tech culture and set us apart from other Tampa Bay communities. So Streetscape Phase 3, and I apologize, this is kind of tiny, but this is a transformative capital improvement project that's been a long time coming. Our community is so excited that Eleanor Lydia, who's a great champion, restarted the neighborhood association for the downtown gateway because she said finally there's something to talk about again and something to plan around and celebrate. The CRA has invested $1.9 million for the streetscape, and we've budgeted $500,000 for the festival core. So that'll be constructed, and we'll be hiring a community artist to work with the neighborhood to put some kind of public art piece in this space once we get farther along in the project. I think, as you know, these kind of projects can kill businesses. Streetscapes is kind of disruptive construction for over a year and a half, and engineering, public comms, and the contractor Gibbs and Register, CRA staff are working above and beyond to make sure that these businesses remain accessible, informed about what's happening, and our community knows that they're open for business. We have a dedicated project website, quarterly neighborhood meetings at local businesses, weekly in-person meetings at Nature's Food Patch, and we've done direct mail to every property within 3/4 of a mile of the project site several times to inform them of the schedule and to advertise our business assistance grants. In order to be more inclusive, we have an agreement with Hispanic Outreach Center to provide translation services for the entire duration of this project for Spanish translation. We've helped the businesses by having the voucher program during the holiday times, also with the window decorating. And improvements like this are part of that longer-term strategy that encourage redevelopment of the Frontier building right at 1250 Cleveland Street. It shows that the city and CRA are committed to investing in this area. Okay, reducing blight and vacancy. At the beginning of this year, you made it very clear that reducing ground floor commercial vacancy was your priority, and we have done several things to work towards that goal. We launched the Opportunity Zone Prospectus, and we did direct mail to every property owner notifying them of our grant programs and that they were located in an opportunity zone. We funded things like the wearable art exhibit and story walk in order to generate positive media, but also to bring attention to where Vacancy is. Because one of the issues is letting people know we're here, this is available, this is something that we would like you to focus on. We've worked with the Downtown Development Board and the DCMA to provide live music on a weekly basis, as well as support the ongoing street closure. And our holiday programming and Clyde Butcher exhibit draw visitors to downtown as well. So those are those short-term, how do we bring people on the street strategies. For long-term, we know one of the key reasons properties remain vacant for those owners who wish to sell or lease is that it's cost prohibitive to renovate out-of-date buildings. We have 5 grant programs right now to assist businesses: sidewalk furniture, facade grants, commercial beautification, white box, and vacancy reduction. You see in the upper corner there, Philly Joe's was a recipient of a facade grant for $68,000, and he was visited by Governor DeSantis a few weeks ago and got a nice tweet out of that. So we were happy that he had somewhere nice to visit. We've awarded 2 facade grants this year, $25,000 each, for an office building on Missouri that was a mid-century modern kind of out of date, that they've totally replaced the windows, fresh coat of paint there, and then also a laundromat. So not necessarily those exciting businesses that you think of generating foot traffic, but again, showing investment and improving how things look. Okay, so in partnership with Codes Enforcement and Public Utilities, we completed an inventory of all the ground floor commercial spaces in the CRA. These numbers are as of November 15th. I did not update them this morning coming into work. So know that this is a point in time and it changes. There are 262 ground floor commercial spaces throughout the whole CRA. 118 of those are vacant. That's a 45% vacancy rate. On the 400 through 1200 block of Cleveland Street, in May 2019, we inventoried 95 spaces. 28 at the time were vacant in May of 2019. That's 29%. In November of this year, 32 or 33% were vacant. So our goal right now is a 10% reduction, which is 26 spaces. So we will continue to monitor that. I'm going to go into more depth on our beautification and white box grants in just a moment, but did you have any questions about that before I
Questions?
continue on?
Councilmember Beckman?
Okay, so in May of 2019, you had 90 spaces on Cleveland and 29% were vacant,
95 spaces.
95 spaces, and now we have 33% are vacant,
Correct.
and we have a goal of filling 26 spaces within the next year?
Now that's throughout the whole CRA.
Throughout the whole
Yes.
CR, okay. And then, the last time I think you presented, you talked about, I think there were 11 or 13 new businesses coming, the axe throwing and the dueling pianos and restaurants. Is that reflected in these numbers?
Yes.
Okay. So,
The ones that are open.
the ones that are open, but like that dueling piano bar, I saw the sign painted, it's just not ready to be.
It's coming. They just received their building permit, so
Okay.
they're under construction.
Okay, so where, are they in the vacancy column, or are they?
They're in the vacancy column because of November 15th.
Until a grant, okay.
Yeah, they're-
Okay, just wanted to get a handle on that, thanks.
Can you get us all those stats that you rattled
Yes.
off?
Absolutely. So diving into.
Councilmember Bunker has a
Oh,
question.
sorry.
We have all these great programs for businesses that can beautify and restore the properties. Is there anything we can do, any type of incentive or stick that we can use to get the owners of these properties to give at least a year-long lease? Because I keep running into people who say, we want to move in here, but they won't give us anything but a month-to-month lease, and no one wants to spend $100,000 to fix up a place without knowing that you'll be able to, stay open in the second month. Is there anything the city can do?
That's a Mr. Margolis question.
It is.
Okay.
Maybe. We don't have any direct power over private contracts in that respect. There may be opportunities through either special assessments or things of that nature, but it's pretty it's pretty restrictive. So we may, I mean, there's things we can talk about, but it's hard to tailor it exactly to the problem that you're looking to solve. So.
All right, thanks.
Carry on.
Yes, and I have shared some of my legal theories with Mr. Margolis that he's researching. I'm not going to go into that here, but I mean, we're thinking about all of that. So to dive into, and again, this is Howard Smith's work. And I'm sorry that he can't be here right now, but we have 3 programs. The commercial beautification is for projects $25,000 and less. That's those exterior improvements, good for tenants or property owners. White box is for projects that are $100,000 and less. For interior and exterior improvements, our grant goes up to $50,000. Again, tenants or property owners. And then, of course, the vacancy reduction grant, which comes before you, that's the one that's up to $500,000. So Howard has done a lot of outreach, direct mail, individual meetings, direct emails, organic and paid media, meeting with real estate commercial brokers, and just continues to touch base over and over again. That's one reason why the window decorating program is important, because that gives us an opportunity to touch base with every property owner and establish that relationship and tenant and let them know these programs are out there. And so it also, gives us a chance. It might seem simple with the window decorating, but a lot of people aren't used to filling out forms. They don't necessarily apply for permits. We get a lot of first-time business owners. So even just going through the process of this is how you submit information that we need in order to issue you money. We are training them up and getting them used to a system to participate in our grant programs. So since the program launched in May, we've had 2 white box applications. Those are the $50,000 each. We've had 2 commercial beautification and 1 vacancy reduction grant, which has been awarded. They have not pulled a building permit yet. In order to finalize a grant agreement, a couple things have to happen. They have to get a building permit if required. They also have to have a business license or be able to obtain one in 60 days. And they have to provide us with 2 quotes for their scope of work. So that being said, everything we do is on a reimbursement basis, and that's to make sure that the money is being spent for what it needs to be spent for. So those are the numbers so far. Again, the challenges to the program: lack of contractors, right? Everyone's kind of dealing with that right now for small jobs. Month-to-month leases, you have to have at least a year-long lease in order to be eligible. So that's an issue. And then of course there is sometimes a lag between, okay, you're eligible for this program, and then you have to receive the building permit before the money starts flowing out of the door. But overall, we've heard very positive feedback. We think the funding for this program is appropriate. The amount is from what we've been told from the people who've applied so far. So we'd like to, move forward for another 6 months and then check back in. Any questions about that?
Any questions for Ms. Thompson?
Okay. I did want to let you know too that out of our food and drink grants, we had 7 of those, and the purpose of that program was to get places serving food and drink on nights and weekends. We had 7. 2 of those have gone out of business, Black Brick and Vector Bar and Arcade. The Nolan is finally under construction on their 3 spaces. If you walk by, you will see dirt and machines and work happening. And then Roxy's, Tequila's, Clear Sky, Pour Yours are all still open.
So will we be going back to get any of those monies back from Black Brick?
They have 6 months to have another food and drink tenant.
Okay.
So the way we designed it, knowing that restaurants are risky, is a restaurant may go out of business, but you have an opportunity to establish another food and drink use.
Councilmember Beckman?
Yeah. I appreciate all of your work and that PowerPoint. You'll share the PowerPoint with us, right? And I had a couple of questions related to the strategy final document. I didn't know if you were, going to go over all of that, or was it was embedded in the?
No, I had just had one more slide on equity and sustainability, and then I'm happy to walk through that. I did not I did not think that you all would want me to go line by line
No,
of
no,
the
no.
whole strategy, but I'm happy if you have specific questions to answer that. I mean, I'll talk all day if you want me to, but I don't think you want
Well, we
that.
gotta
You
a
can
little-
talk for 35 minutes and
Yeah,
then you're done. Including the director's report.
Tough crowd. And we have like 3 minutes of video to show. Yes, thank you. We'll keep that in mind.
Then you have 29 minutes.
So, just touching on equity and sustainability quickly, this flows through all of our work. So we don't necessarily call them out as a specific program, but we're constantly thinking about these issues. I do think for equity, it starts with us, it starts with our staff. And I'm happy to say that we have an extremely diverse staff, not only in gender, but who's a Florida native, who's moved here, the ways that we approach the community, where we are in our life experiences. And that really helps us to reach all those different groups of people that we listed before. And especially when you're designing programs, you really have to think about the people that are going to be applying to those programs and how to reach them, not just how you would think about it. Of course, we support community policing and case management. We've really thought hard about how do we make it easier to access grant funds? How do we reduce that administrative burden so forms are understandable, they're simple, while still protecting, right, the public tax dollar, finding that balance. And I will say the Downtown Development Board, they've worked with us very hard on this as well to make it just as easy as possible, right, to obtain that funding to help us implement the downtown plan. Communicating in multiple formats, languages, and channels. Long-term stuff, building mixed income housing, building the streetscape, that's really the best thing that we can do for the environment, is having a compact footprint that we're all living within, shared parking. Then finally, art with environmental themes, really celebrating the natural history and the environmental history of Florida. So with that, I am finished with my formal comments.
Councilmember Albritton.
So I know that at one time, you were helping people that were giving the grants to help them through the permitting process. Is that still in effect?
Yes, in the sense that Howard Smith is helping them. He recently, corralled everyone to help get their sidewalk cafe permits, right, in the closure area. So providing them information, making sure they're connecting with the right person in planning and building department, helping them get their maps or surveys together as needed. And so we're not filling out the permit for them, but we are being that liaison.
Well, I know, I just, being, involved with this before, I think it's a good idea you're doing that, because I hate to give grants out and then have people fail to be able to get a building permit and then go elsewhere. So I think that's real important to keep the conversation going if they need anything, and help them through that particular stage, because I know that's, for people that don't pull permits all the time, it's a very rough stage.
Yes. I forgot to mention, the Pinellas County Licensing Board has a list of 74 trade areas and general contractors, and we connect them with that list too when they're having trouble getting quotes.
Okay, good.
How realistic do you think the 50 million in private investment is? Because if we're not putting goals we can achieve, then
the bulk of that would come from the South Washington development and the 1250 Cleveland development. When we're looking at building permit information and business license information and pulling that, those numbers are very small. And even when we start to add in, the matching funds for our grant programs, right? Every $50,000 we spend, they're spending at least $50,000. I mean, you look at all of that and you're still looking at, under $1 million. But that number comes from anticipating we would have had a development deal done for the Bluff properties, right? South Washington would have been completed. 1250 Cleveland. So really the bulk of that number is saying, are we moving forward with these bigger developments?
do you have an update on Washington?
It'll be back to you in February. We have final interlocals and development agreements in front of the county and the Clearwater Housing Authority. So we're getting their sign off, and then it'll be on our agenda.
I mean, I still think we ought to be focusing on getting roofs in the downtown, followed by new businesses. And I don't just mean restaurants. I'm talking about employment for larger numbers of people. And then the other priority ultimately for me is when we pull the trigger on going back out with the 3 Bluff properties. And, you know, I think we need to do it in a different way. I think we need to select the master developers that we want to pursue. And Mr. Jennings and I have talked about that, rather than just casting the net and seeing what comes in. So those are my priorities for this coming year. And I think as Imagine Clearwater progresses, it's going to certainly give people assurance that, I mean, that project will be completed. There is no turning back. But I think people will get a much better idea of the magnitude of what that's going to do for downtown. It's going to make the 3 Bluff properties significantly easier. So other questions or comments? Councilmember Beckman?
So on that last slide about equity and sustainability, so I didn't, you know, one of the things you said was to have a smaller footprint, a compact footprint to help support the environment. I mean, but you are always aware of Greenprint 2.0 and our goals and using those when we work with developers. And so if we have a goal of 1,000 solar on the homes of 1,000 low-income people by 2030, the CRA is an area we can look at as well, right? Okay, and same thing with community gardens, which I know we did with that one that's coming on Cleveland, which is fantastic. You also had support policing and case management, and I was just wondering if you could describe what does supporting case management look like?
Sure, so the CRA has provided additional funding for the officers that do the ride-along that they've hired now that respond to calls for people who appear to have mental illness.
Okay. So that comes out of that CRA fund for our,
We pay for towards a portion.
okay. And then I had some questions on the strategy document, and so in speaking with residents who live in that East Gateway, and we know that Kathy Flaherty is a resident who lives there, has a business, is very passionate and communicates regularly. She still has concerns about the visuals and the trash. And I was wondering, are there many first of all, can we acknowledge that part of our focus is also on quality of life for the residents that live within the CRA? And some of the concerns she's mentioned, along with the trash, the visual of the dumpsters, particularly in her neighborhood, could there be a mini grant program where those business owners, or they're really multifamily unit owners, be incentivized to keep their property up a little bit more? And then the other ask or question is, can we do something along Franklin Street to make it easier for residents in the East Gateway to get over to Crest Lake Park? Franklin's real wide, and if we could paint a bike lane or a walking lane or something like that, maybe have additional signage or lighting, and then even a solar crosswalk to get from Franklin over to the park and back, so families with strollers or wagons or children or elderly have a safe way to get there. So that was 2 things that I told her I'd mention. What do you think?
Yes, I mean, certainly CRA funds can be used for street improvements, streetscape improvements. That's something we'd have to coordinate with engineering on. And then in terms of the trash containers, which I know have been a long time discussion, it is part of our work plan in 2022 to have a residential addressing, visual blight and those kind of things. But with each of those properties, they're grandfathered in, right? So in residential, you do have to, in hotel, you have to provide some parking. So it's, of course, we can create a grant program. That's not the issue. The challenge is going to be their site layout and how they can meet zoning standards for parking, for where things can be adjacent to the street. That's really the issue there. So the money, the money is not the issue.
Yeah, and I walked that with Bryant Johnson, which was very informative. But also, you know, if we have just kind of some bad actors in that area that dump mattresses and dump things around dumpsters, maybe it's some better enforcement as well. I had a question on page 2. You've got creating and sharing positive, authentic stories about downtown. One of my questions was, does sharing mean solely on social media? Does it also mean, you know, news stories, print and TV? And I think you mentioned how the Clyde Butcher got 9 different media attention or articles. And I was thinking, could we do something like send us your 30-second video on why you like downtown Clearwater, and then we could compile them, especially with like the 12 Days of Christmas or these different events that we have, and maybe we have a little ask of residents. And then I had another, since we have a little bit of time, another idea, like inviting CNC neighborhood members and different neighborhood groups, not just the coalition, but the different neighborhood groups, to hold a monthly meeting in a downtown location. And could we open a building that we own, and maybe offer half-price meal coupons or some kind of incentive to get them to come down before their meeting or stay after, and just pull from a variety of locations in the city.
Well, DCMA did invite many neighborhoods down for an evening. I know they did the beach, I know they did Harbor Oaks, Morningside, and Countryside.
Let's see, I had a question about, well, I have lots of fantastics. Produce the Holiday Extravaganza event series annually in December. So I wasn't able to be here for the tree lighting, but I was here last night for the kickoff of the 12 days, and that was really cute. It was, you know, it was nice. Could have been a little better attended, but it was good. It was a school night. Okay. Where you've got analyze the perception of downtown in the print media and social media through sentiment analysis. I have my notes here. Are we monitoring it for change? How can we be more out front in this?
So we're working with Bandwagon on that right now, and if you remember, they met with you earlier this year and did all that surveying. So we're in the process of reviewing those results and getting that in a final digestible document. So we'll have that very early next year, and that analysis is part of that work. And that's something that, so the 2 questions that we are working on with Bandwagon is, what is the current perception, right? Because that's the thing. What do people think within a 5-mile radius, right, about downtown and in the region? And does it match up with what we're trying to communicate and promote? Does it match up with what we think or not? Because all of us have a lot of anecdotal evidence of people that we talk to, that they're bringing scientific survey to that. For sentiment analysis, I mean, we could pay for a third-party software to analyze that and go through that, but first we wanted to go through this process with Bandwagon to establish what the goal is, that we're measuring for and looking at. And that evaluation's very hard, right? As we look at this work and long, especially when things take a long time to happen. So we are searching for every way possible, right? Whether it be the counting the people, looking at the media, like, are we making a difference? Is this really changing? So I say that to say that we put that in there as something to consider, and we are. How much money we end up spending on it, if it ends up being useful, that's still to be determined.
Okay. And then, did you say when Bandwagon was going to do a presentation for us or give us?
Most likely February or March.
Okay. And then I'm just thinking, because of perception, and we've had, extensive reporting about more property acquisition by the marina. And so can we be actively involved in putting out another side of the story? And so I think, what are to really be transparent and upfront about the legal options the city has related to development of properties in the CRA or in our downtown area. information like the city can't pay more than market value for property, that property owners have property rights, and transparency about taxes paid on different properties in our downtown area. I mean, can we be more proactive to just put this to rest and move on and work on developing our downtown, you know?
We are working on a fact sheet, right, about property ownership with legal, and I think that's really, the city manager's call. What information we want to put out there, right, in combination with you guys, and something that is a little bit challenging is when it's public information from a public source, right, here's the rules, here's the legalities, people tend to believe that. When you start getting into more of our world, we have to be very careful we don't get into a propaganda feel, right, because I'm paid to tell you good things about downtown, right, that's the position of power that we're in. So as you were saying, when other people share their stories, whether it's the little videos, whatever it may be, we are looking to amplify, right, that and share other people's information of their downtown experiences, so it's not all coming from us, because again, we are paid to do this. It is in our best interest to share that information. So I don't know, really your most effective communication is very niche. You have a very well-defined target audience, right? If we just send things out into the general, it's not going to land or stick so much, especially in our current media environment. I don't know if you remember when Rosemary DeMore was here and, right, giving this real, Rosemary is a media expert and giving the overview of how much we're in our bubbles, right? There's 5 media companies, right, in the United States, and all of everything is intentionally designed to keep us in a little bubble, an echo chamber, only hearing what we want to hear and knowing who we know. So it takes a lot to break through that.
And if I may, so I have several comments related to that in the city manager's report later in the workshop, but I do believe that there will be a lot more information coming specifically to those questions in January.
So a fact sheet in January?
Or more.
Okay, fantastic. Right. And let me just make sure I don't have any.
We'll say to date this year, we've had 26 print or digital pieces and 16 television pieces on downtown, which is exciting.
This is just a question about, we've got provide CRA grant program in the areas of facade improvements, housing construction, build out and vacant commercial spaces. And I should know this, but when there's a multifamily housing development, and there are a number in that East Gateway that maybe have 12 or 20 units, is that considered classified as residential or business? Because somebody's making money off it there, right? There's a business owner that owns it and leases it, but it is residential. So could that person qualify for a facade grant because they're running a housing business? If I'm the owner of that.
I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at the details of the grant program. Generally, it has to be, up on a main street, and for a facade, the only thing that would qualify is one wall that would be adjacent to the public road. So,
or to beautify it, and okay. I think it's imperative when we've got partner with the planning department, the economic development and housing departments to construct a missing middle housing project and create a welcome downtown Clearwater business toolkit. I just want to emphasize in looking at legislation that seems to be, going to be introduced in this 22 legislative session, that we need to continue to be very pro-business, incentivize a lot. I know you do a ton here, but we need to really kind of toot our own horn and make that real obvious, because we are partnering with businesses. We want businesses here. We want them to be successful. I would hope that we want to hold their hand and mentor and, through the permitting process and all that, and get that message out there, because I think it's just real important to be consistent and proactive that way. I have, what does this look like? Oh, provide support for Clearwater Community Garden, ongoing. Just continue to do that?
we provide them the property for free.
Yep.
And then we are also of course, preserving them through the redevelopment of the property.
Okay.
If they want to do things beyond that, that's why we're establishing the placemaking grant program. That'll be coming before you in January.
Okay. All right. We have a cleanup tonight, so I'll report that to them. I guess one last one. Underway, provide COVID-19 compliant programming for the temporary closure of Cleveland Street. I have, indefinite closure, right? And then, commission design for Cleveland Street lighting project. Is that the creatures in the branches? Are we gonna do any of that stuff?
Yeah, that's on pause right now, because that company is based in Canada. I mean, they've just started opening up, but there was a request from all our downtown businesses that they wanted to meet with the designers in person. And they had lots of different ideas about what they thought could or should happen. So that's on pause for the moment. Also, with the Welcome to Downtown Business Toolkit, we put that in there, not realizing that Amplify already does that and has an incredible resource. So the CRA staff is not going to do that because Amplify, Clearwater, and Spark, they're all handling that way better than we can.
And I guess on that note, do you have any update on how the Collaborative Labs group is doing? Are they still meeting regularly and coordinating?
They've shifted their focus to 12 Days of Christmas and holiday programming, but we'll bring them back in January or February. But the long and short of it is we had a positive meeting at Collaborative Labs. We will send you that real-time record. But at this point in time, each group feels like they have distinct enough identities to remain distinct groups. They're going to try to overlap a little more using the downtownclearwater.com shared calendar. Maybe look at some shared memberships. So if I'm a business in downtown, I don't have to belong to 3 different organizations. But I think right now they're moving forward as keeping their individual organizations.
Okay, thank you.
Your videos.
Yes. So my only updates are there are many, many free fun things to do in downtown over the holidays. So please take advantage of movies and
Joelle, can you come turn this middle monitor on, please? Yeah.
big thank you to our 48 business owners who participated this year. We only had 12 in 2019, so that is a very large increase, and we're so happy to see everyone again joining in to help in downtown revitalization.
Whose responsibility is it to take it off the windows?
We have cleaners.
Okay.
It's part of, we do. Beginning to end, we take care of it.
And then you had a second
We
video?
had the tree lighting, but, I mean, if you want to see it.
Got 9 minutes.
Very good. With that, we will adjourn the CRA, and we will take an 8-minute recess. Good morning, everyone. We'll call the pension trustees to order. I would ask if there are any amendments to the minutes of the October 18th, 2021 meeting. See none, do I have a motion?
Move approval of the minutes as submitted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. This time I'd like to open it up to citizens to be heard. If there are any citizens to speak to the pension trustees on items that are not on the agenda. Seeing none, 4.1.
Good morning, Jennifer Poirier, Human Resources Director. For this item, I'm going to call up Jay Ravens, the Finance Director.
Good morning, trustees. Jay Ravens, Finance Director. We are requesting approval of a 5-year agreement for actuarial services with Gabriel Roeder Smith and Company for a not-to-exceed total of $284,950. The pension plan requires an annual calendar year actuarial valuation to determine the required funding level, as well as a separate fiscal year actuarial valuation for financial reporting purposes. Also, an additional annual actuarial analysis is currently required per Florida statutes, Chapter 112.664. Finally, the pension plan ordinance requires an actuarial experience study of plan assumptions at least once every 6 years. Request for proposal, or RFP 47-21, was issued for these services in August. The RFP committee unanimously chose Gabriel Roeder Smith, the plan's current actuary, from the 8 respondents. Gabriel Roeder Smith provided very competitive pricing and is a national leader and Florida leader in providing actuarial services to public sector. Gabriel Roeder Smith has been the plan's actuary since January 2010 and has consistently provided an excellent level of service. A separate agreement for actuarial services for other post-employment benefit services per the RFP will be presented to the City Council for approval via a separate agenda item.
Questions for Mr. Ravens? Will they be doing the supplemental fire as well, seeing as we lost our actuary, or is that going to be a separate?
The old fire pension plan?
Yes.
They're doing that at least for 1 year, this current year, on kind of an emergency basis because of the loss of the actuary we had under contract. We'll be going out for quotes to competitively secure a replacement for the long term.
Going to be hard to replace the price we had on that.
Yeah, we won't come, I don't think we'll come very close to the deal we had with Mouton and Company.
Well, Glenn Mouton was a great man and we appreciated his services. It's a tremendous loss. Any other questions about this item? I have a motion.
Move to approve agenda item 4.1.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. 4.2.
The Pension Investment Committee is recommending termination of Voya Investment Management as a large cap growth equity money manager for the pension plan. Voya was hired by the plan in December 1987 and had excellent performance for the plan for many years. As indicated in the performance information provided in the agenda item, they have underperformed versus their index and their public sector peers over the last 3-year, 5-year, and 10-year periods. The trustees previously approved moving the majority of the monies invested with Voya to a Northern Trust Index Fund. At this time, we recommend moving the remaining approximately $10 million to the Northern Trust Index Fund and terminating the money manager agreement with Voya.
Any questions for Mr. Ravens?
This is a good move.
Motion.
Motion to approve agenda item 4.2.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. 4.3.
Good morning again. Request to approve the new hires for acceptance into the pension plan as listed.
Any questions for Ms. Blair? Motion.
Move to approve item 4.3.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. 4.4.
Request to approve the following request of employees to vest their pension as provided by Section 2.419 of the Employees Pension Plan.
Any questions for Ms. Blair? Motion.
Move approval of agenda item 4.4.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. 4.5.
Request the following request of employees for regular pension as provided by sections 2.416 and 2.424 of the employees' pension plan.
Any questions? Motion?
Move to approve agenda item 4.5.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Anything else, Ms. Boyer?
No, sir.
All right. We will adjourn the pension trustees and call to order the work session, item 2.1.
To adopt the 2022 Clearwater Cultural Arts Strategic Plan, providing recommendations for arts and cultural actions and programs for fiscal year 2022-23 through fiscal year 2028-29. Mr. Hubbard.
Good morning, Mayor, Council, managers, and staff. I'm Christopher Hubbard, Cultural Affairs Coordinator for the city. I am before you this morning with the updated Clearwater Cultural Arts Strategic Plan for the years 2022 through 2028. A little bit of backstory on our consultant. They are designing local. They were selected through an open RFQ process that resulted in 8 total applicants. They are a female-owned company out of Columbus, Ohio, and they have been in operation since 2014. They specialize in strategic and master planning for the arts, culture, public art, historic preservation, landscape architecture, and urban planning and design, all of which fall under the interests of our Cultural Affairs Division and programming for our community. Clearwater has a long history of supporting the arts and culture. We have long-standing partnerships with local organizations such as Ruth Eckerd Hall, Francis Wilson Playhouse, and City Players doing performing arts theater in Clearwater. We also have one of the country's longest operational sister cities program with our cultural exchange program with Nagano, Japan, which has been in effect since 1959. We also have a history of arts instruction through our recreation centers and our recreation leaders. And we had an artist in residence program in the 1980s that was the precursor to our public art and design program. We have also had a history of partnering with local organizations. The Clearwater Arts Alliance and Dr. Craig Dreesen partnered together to create the Clearwater Cultural Plan in 2002, which is our initial operating document. Here we have a picture of the Centennial Oak here at Clearwater, here at the main library, which is a beacon for many people entering into the facility, and is very popular with children. They like to run around the base of it. Now, there were 6 specific goals of the 2002 plan. Stimulate cultural development, create a public art program, enhance participation opportunities for the community members and local artists, establish Clearwater as an artist-friendly city where artists can live, work, and thrive, promote lifelong learning in the arts for all generations, and recognize the arts and culture as an economic engine supporting our local economy. The major accomplishments of the plan was that the plan initially created the Cultural Affairs Division, which was partnered and in the Parks and Recreation Department. It has also established the Public Art Design Program in 2005, which set aside 1% of the total construction value of capital improvement projects for on-site public artwork. It also adopted the Public Art and Private Development Ordinance, which went into effect in 2006. And this put a mandated 1% on all project values over $5 million for private development programs. They were either to provide on-site public artwork or donate to the city's public art fund at a rate of 0.75% of their job value. This transitioned to a voluntary program in 2013 following case law and different happenings around the country with challenges to impact fees. And so it was advised that we transition to a voluntary program so that we still had the program on the books. Developers could still participate if they wished. And we did have some good participation in that, although it has declined since then. Organizations such as the Opal Sands and the Bay Care facility out on Drew Street voluntarily commissioned artwork by some very talented local artists. This is one of our new murals as part of the CRA's Downtown Mural Program. This is by DOS, and this is located at the Franklin Street building on the east facade. Doss is a worldwide artist, but originally was born here in Pinellas County and went to Pinellas Tech for his art degree. So it's good to have someone come back home and do a very nice project like this. So with new times and new considerations, a budget was allocated for an updated plan in fiscal year 1920. This was to understand community needs and prepare a vision for the future. We wanted to build on the accomplishments of the 2002 plan, evaluate current programming in the community, both public and private, engage public feedback exercises to make sure that we're talking to a wide span of commenters and participants, as well as leaders in the community, and develop key strategies and actions for the next 5 to 7 years to guide our progress. In building off the 2002 plan, we revisited the document with the goals, objectives, and strategies to determine if the tasks were met, in process or ongoing, not implemented, and not practical. Some of these, just with changing times, fell to the wayside. However, others are strong and lasting impacts into our community. So just updating to the changing climate and the changing landscape of our cultural neighborhood. This is artist Yala Ford with her Signal Box Wrap Antique Pavia. This was commissioned by the Clearwater Arts Alliance as part of their Thinking Outside the Box program. And you undoubtedly have seen many of these around the community as it's been a very successful program. The Public Art Fund with the Public Art and Development Board has sponsored a number of these boxes as well out of their micro grant program. In evaluating the current programming, we asked the question of what is currently offered in the community and what source provides that programming. Is it provided by the city, from a private agency such as Dunedin Fine Arts Center, the My Favorite Art Place on Hercules, and other instructional workshops, as well as St. Petersburg College, their Drew Street campus, and the art programming and major that they have there. And then looking into the potential of partnerships with new and emerging organizations, as well as strengthening existing partnerships that we have. And then finally, to determine the utilization and potential of ongoing programs, looking for areas where we can diversify some of the offerings, and then also implementing new programs to respond to community needs and interests. There was a rigorous public feedback exercise in which there were numerous public meetings. COVID was a bit challenging in gathering people together, but we used the resources available to us to hold virtual interviews and some small group interviews where possible. Also targeted stakeholders to get the most current information to see what their organizations are doing, as well as being community catalysts reporting back on what's happening in their neighborhoods and their organization. Also essential individuals and organizations that provide critical services to our arts and cultural community. And then we convened a Future of the Arts and Culture in Clearwater panel that assembled a number of arts and cultural leaders as well as local artists to speak to how their organization is continuing their operations in the COVID and post-COVID era and how they are reaching out to new audiences and diversifying their programs. So we had Mark Ayling from MGA Sculpture Studio, Sharon Reed Kane from Ruth Eckerd Hall, Barbara St. Clair from Creative Pinellas, Roberta Clark from Clearwater Arts Alliance, Beth Warmath, who is a muralist here in Clearwater, and Amanda Golden was our MC. She is from Designing Local. Now from the new updated plan, we had a series of strategies and actions for guiding cultural development and investment in the arts. There were 7 strategies focused into 3 target areas: public art, cultural growth, and place-based investments. And so strategy number 1 in public art is to strengthen the identity of neighborhoods through an investment in public art at the neighborhood level. This is taking a look at our community and finding where we have created inroads for public art and areas that could use some future development and targeted programming. And so we feel that responding to the neighborhood's individual identities and providing them with access to public art will improve the quality of life and improve the awareness and exposure to arts to individuals of all different economic and age levels. Here's a current heat map of the proliferation of public art here in the city. This is at a 1 mile radius. The lighter colors are future projects. The darker purple color are existing projects. So as you can see, there are some targeted areas within the city that we would like to diversify and begin programming within. Also, under public art, strategy 2 is expand funding for public art through reinstating the percent for art in private development ordinance. This is a topic that Cultural Affairs staff would like to approach the council at a later date. We are wanting to investigate looking at other communities and seeing what they're doing, either bringing their programs back online or instating new programs to investigate what we can do with our program to get some more participation from private development. Strategy 3 is also in public art to invest in iconic public art and strategic locations to bolster the public art experience. This would be a prime location within Imagine Clearwater, investing in a large-scale iconic piece that would become a visual reference in addition to the many improvements that are done at the site. We've found that often a signature investment in public art can serve as a marketing tool as well as media presence. And being part of a community process, it is often accepted and embraced by the community, seeing their fingerprints in the design of the work. So through a robust public interaction, we can hopefully commission something that will work well in the community. Under cultural strategies, strengthen existing programs and city departments through an expansion of offerings and injection of creativity. Partnering Cultural Affairs now under the City Manager's Office to work with different agencies, divisions, and departments within the city, providing assistance in cultural affairs, and looking to where an injection of creativity might help to assist either relations with the community or just branding for some of the programs that these individual departments have. That could be as simple as bringing an artist in and interacting with them as sort of an artist in residence program, looking back to the 1980s version, or something similar for a modern era. Additionally, strategy 5, implement programs that build the capacities of the arts and culture sector to be more unified in their vision towards the same goal. Just because we are different agencies does not mean we need to compete with one another. Often our goals are the same: create inroads to art and creative industries, as well as diversify and build the creative economy here in Clearwater. So looking to our partners in the community, finding out where we can create public-private partnerships to expand the reach of programming, as well as expand the awareness of the city and those individual organizations. Here we have Need and Fine Arts Center's Wheels on Wheels program. This is a mobile clay and pottery class that travels through different areas of the community. It's very popular. And then lastly, strategy 6, define spaces in Clearwater that an investment in the arts can be concentrated for maximum effect. Essentially seeing areas where people congregate and arrive at locations that an investment in the arts will be significant because it is in areas that they travel through on a daily basis. Finding those hubs of trails and multi-use bike corridors, looking to the Pinellas Trail, and then also recreation centers and community centers, particularly in the neighborhoods where we're looking to expand those offerings. And finally, strategy 7, support neighborhoods through broadening and diversifying arts experiences. Getting back to a neighborhood-centric program where we are responsive in our programming, ensuring that we're reaching the community and being responsive and active to the initiatives and developments that they wish to see in their own arts and culture programming, and trying to be as responsive as possible. So with that, city staff is hoping for your support in adopting this ordinance, and then allowing city staff to investigate the Public Art and Private Development Ordinance to bring you more information at a later date. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great job, Mr. Hubbard.
Thank you.
Questions?
I had a question. Can you, strategy one is strengthen the identity of neighborhoods through an investment in public art at the neighborhood level. What does that look like? Is that like murals on walls or sculptures or?
It's really publicly accessible. These are micro projects, whether it be murals on walls or the storm drain painting projects that we've had, as well as small scale sculpture and roundabouts and neighborhood arteries, looking to really inject human scale, easily interactive public work that people can see themselves in and approach it very easily, rather than large scale projects like Imagine Clearwater that we have that are really designed to be a beacon and a signal.
So kind of ones that they might contribute to, right?
Absolutely,
Like the
yes.
storm drain
Yep.
and the murals, okay. And then on the strategy two, expand funding through that development, the percent for art and private development ordinance. But you had said earlier that that was legally challenged. So is there hope that we can like incentivize or encourage that, or like have a different ordinance?
We do
Mr.
want to invest.
Margolis.
That's what I was going to speak to.
Yeah.
So as Mr. Hubbard pointed out, I mean, our query of it, there may be ways to reinstate that program, but I'd like to have that discussion with each council member. There is some legal risk there, so.
It was wonderful back in the day because we did get a lot of the redevelopment that occurred out on the beach. Most of those projects were well above $5 million. And so almost all of them took advantage of or didn't have a choice. But they also did not give us the money. They didn't opt for the 75 basis points. They did the art on site. And it was a shame because we were getting a critical mass of art throughout the city.
There is some case law change in 2013 from the U.S. Supreme Court that has made this more challenging. There may be some ways to mitigate that, but I'd like to brief each of you on that before we go down that path.
There also may be some incentives that we can give, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then on strategy four, I have a hard time envisioning what that is at the city level. Strengthen existing programs in city departments through expansion of offerings and injection of creativity. So what might that look like for our city department?
Just providing the potential of having an artist come in and speak with staff, whether it's regular operations or whether it's interfacing with the public. Artists are natural problem solvers, and they tend to think so far out of the box that sometimes it's in a different zip code. But a lot of times they can look at the actual structure of things, and it's there if the department or the division is interested in it, of either injecting creativity on a daily basis, improving employee morale, creating new avenues of employee expression, or looking to our interactions with the public.
Okay. And then have we ever thought about, strategy 6 first. Define spaces within Clearwater that an investment in the arts can be concentrated for maximum effect. And I just had a question. We're talking about, in your discussion, it sounds like maximum exposure. I didn't know if it meant maximum economic benefit, like investing in something iconic by Imagine Clearwater that's going to have, potential economic payoff, or is it just exposure or a combination of both?
It can serve as both a combination. Certainly for visual reference, but economy is definitely something that we need to pay attention to because the arts do contribute quite a bit.
Okay. And then when we talk about arts, are you thinking, or we're thinking about poetry and literature as well as drama? Okay.
Yeah, visual, performance arts, literary arts, the entire gamut. Although visual arts often are the focus of programs like this, it really much more ephemeral arts as far as dance, theater, spoken word, music. They're all avenues of exploration.
Did anyone ever bring up a artist in residence or a poet laureate to have at our?
Yes, and there is a existing structure that many of our fellow cities have that we could implement as well.
Okay. And then one last question. Was our Arts and Culture Advisory Board really involved in developing the strategies on the front end?
They assisted and met with our consultants as key strategic partners.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor, your question got
My
answered.
question got answered. I mean, I was just, you and I were both on the council at the time when we implemented the 1%, and we thought we'd hit a home run, and then we ran into a little legal issue, and I was just, gonna, get clarification on where we stand right now, because, I mean, if there's a way to do a program similar to that, but do it within the confines of what the Supreme Court says we can, then, it's something we definitely need to, I think we should be looking at.
Councilmember Albrecht.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed before when you and I talked. We had somebody want to donate art, and I thought it would be a good thing, but I don't know if he was, demanding that it be put in a certain place. I thought we maybe could find, art's in the eye of the beholder, so sometimes it, you don't agree that it might not be the best thing, but was that that he didn't want it to be put except in a certain place? Okay.
There were a number of caveats and restrictions to.
Okay.
But I also, kind of piggybacking on something that Councilmember Beckman said, when we think of Imagine Clearwater, I do think it would be a very worthwhile investment if we can find the right piece to have a, Philadelphia is known for the love structure, statue, and whatnot, and I think it would
And
be
Rocky.
and Rocky, and the Rocky, and the, I hate to think how many times I ran those steps, but
Really?
Random?
not recently, but I mean, I think it would be money well spent if we could find that iconic piece of artwork that would be in Imagine Clearwater, be in that park for decades to come, that would really be a signature piece for the city. So I look forward to trying to find that.
Well, that art down at, with the lights down at the pier has become, an attraction in and of itself. So I think we ought to be looking for something along those lines.
Yeah.
Anything else? Consent?
Yes.
2.2.
Approve a contract purchase order to Synergistic LLC of Dallas, Texas for the creation and implementation of a municipal energy savings program to include a third-party software in the amount of $16,900 pursuant to RFP 15-20 Energy Savings Program, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute the same. Prior to Ms. Boyle, I just wanted to mention that I am very supportive of this analysis. This is something that I think is critically important for us to take a look at, to get the data, and then begin to look at how we can use that data for savings, and certainly the rest of it. But Ms. Boyle?
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, Mayor and Council. So with energy being the largest contributor to the city's greenhouse gas emissions, and by wanting to serve as an example for our private sectors, the city aims to reduce its personal energy consumption. As a result, we are seeking approval of a contract with Synergistic to implement an energy conservation program for the city's facilities, and we are excited to elaborate on that program today. Synergistic has partnered with many organizations across the country, most locally Pinellas County Schools and Alachua County, to pair energy management software with behavior-based energy conservation programs to decrease consumption. This morning, we are joined by Steve Jones, Synergistic's Regional Vice President in Client Development, to provide a summary of their experience and programs. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mayor, City Manager, ladies and gentlemen of the council, thank you for having me. Thank you, Sheridan. Y'all got a champ here, I'm telling you what. My name's Steve Jones. I'm with Synergistic. It's very good to be here. Thanks for inviting me down to Clearwater. I'll come to Clearwater anytime I get the opportunity. I retired from the city of Montgomery, 26 years, worked for the mayor there. It's good to be back in city council meetings on this side instead of on the other side, so thanks for having me. A little bit about how I got here to kind of put this in context. The City of Montgomery in 2016 was applying for the All-American City Award, and it's just a municipal award that goes out throughout the country, and we were lacking in the sustainability portion of that program. We had an energy manager, nothing like you have here, but the mayor came to me and said, I want to go green. I want to go green, and I mean it. And he left my office, and I turned around and Googled, how do you go green? Put together an ad hoc team, and after about 6 months, I said to the mayor, if you want to say we have a program for the council, we have a program. If we really want to have a serious attempt at this and make this count, we need to go to somebody that knows what they're doing. Montgomery Public Schools at the time was a partner with Synergistic, and weekly on the news there was something celebrating the conservation efforts the public school was doing, and we basically said if our kids are doing it, it's time for us to get involved. We partnered with Synergistic, and it's just been a fantastic program. I retired, went to work for the company because it's something I firmly believe in, and I think it's been about a year and a half. Y'all put out an RFP for a behavioral change. We're honored to be selected, so through all of that, we're here today, and I'd like to go over this presentation. I'll keep it concise. Questions anytime during or at the end. So I can just, here we go. As I said earlier, we've been around about 35 years, about 1,500 partners throughout the country, municipalities, higher education, K-12. The company was started by the gentleman that still runs the company. He was a school board member, was passionate about conservation in West Texas, which is a hard place to be passionate about conservation, but he made this work, and today the company, like I said, has over 1,500 clients throughout the country. What we do, I want to be real clear about this, we do not sell equipment. You do not finance anything with us. We are 100% behavioral change on the way you use energy. We establish, create, and maintain a culture of sustainability. We feel that education is so much more productive than dictation of what you're doing. As we make these changes, as we reduce the carbon footprint, as we reduce the energy consumption, we're explaining to the public and to your staff why we're doing this, and then we celebrate the fruits of their labor. We have found that it's so much more successful to involve people instead of just dictating to do something and walk away. Education and involvement is a huge part of what we do. I'm going to show some stuff a little bit about your fine young citizens that are in Pinellas County Schools. We like to get the word out of what you're doing. When I worked for the mayor, I was passionate about, I have a responsibility to be a good steward of the taxpayer dollar. I took that very seriously. We found that energy consumption was something that we could actually tighten up a little bit on, and we did. Third component, it's been the backbone of what this company's done for 35 years. It's never been as prevalent as it has been in the last couple of years as healthy buildings. We concentrate heavily on CO2 emissions. We concentrate heavily on filtration of your buildings, outside air quality. Your facility team, and I was honored to be over operations. In my opinion, they're one of the most understaffed and underrecognized organizations in the government. We're here to help them handle the things that they just don't have enough bandwidth to do. I know it is in central Alabama. I imagine down here in Florida in the summer, they're chasing their tails for complaints, air conditioning issues. We want to step in and be a part of that to help them. And then finally, we create a funding source. It's just pragmatically there that if you reduce the amount of energy you spend, you are going to put money back into your budget. Not very often does the local utility provider call and just say, we'd like to reduce what you pay per kilowatt hour. So we find that reducing the amount of energy that you use is a good funding source. It funds this program. It funds this program. We put a roof on the Rosa Parks Library in Montgomery, and there's nothing better to have a sign out front that says the funding for this project, or this project was funded by the conservation efforts of the citizens and the workers of the city of Montgomery. It's a powerful thing. What we've done, I don't like to brag about what we've done. I usually like to let what we've done with other people talk. We average about 25% reduction over the country with our clients. Some of them much more, some of them a little bit less, but on the average 25%. That Energy Star recognition up there at the top, over 13,000 Energy Star recognitions for facilities. What that means, and apologize if I'm telling you something you know, that means when you get an Energy Star certified building, that you are in the top 25% in energy conservation and sustainability of buildings like yours within the country. It's a pretty powerful thing to get that Energy Star rating on a city hall, on a library, where your constituents know that you're serious about what you're doing. There is an award that is the Energy Star Sustained Excellence Award. It is given by the EPA and the Department of Energy to 60 organizations throughout the country annually. It is not something that you apply for. It is something that the EPA hands out to organizations that are doing tip-of-the-spear work in sustainability. Synergistic has had it for 12 years in a row. So we're very proud of that. I don't like to pat myself on the back, but I think that's something worth noting. As Dr. Grego, here in Pinellas County, we have over 200 Pinellas County schools and facilities that are Energy Star rated. That is a big thing. I'm sure you all know Dr. Grego. He is one of the most humble men that I have dealt with. I just love being around him. Clint Herbeck over there as well. Unbelievable, humble man, but he loves to talk about what they're doing with conservation. He is proud of that program. We're proud to partner with them. How does this work? What does this look like? You already have, like I said with Sheraton, an unbelievable foundation of sustainability. What we do is we're going to hire a full-time employee and assign them to Clearwater. Their only job, their only concern is the energy conservation plan. A lot of times we find that if you have an internal energy manager, which is an awesome position to have, that this is just a foundation that allows them to be successful. It is not uncommon for energy managers to be pulled in other directions as the year progresses, recycling, CNG, those kind of things, and that's amazing. But what we've got, because they are our employee, is they are 100% dedicated to the mission here. You see a list of those experts, the subject matter experts on the left. Those are the people that are part of this program that we will bring in if we find that there are areas within the organization that needs a little more attention. If we're looking at irrigation, if our water consumption is getting a little higher than it should, we're going to bring somebody in to take a look at why we're doing that. That is part of our program, because when I get to the financing, if you do not succeed with your program, we do not succeed. This is not something where you pay us a fee, and if we hit the mark, that's great. If we don't, well, that's just another service rendered. You'll see that we are invested in being a partner with the program. Again, about that energy specialist, we are not looking for HVAC mechanics. We are not looking for technicians. We are looking to bring people in here that know the culture, that can set up Earth Day in the library and go speak at Rotary clubs to where we can talk about what we're doing. This is a position that needs to be somebody that is passionate about what they're doing here. Working with the Sierra Club locally, those kind of organizations to where we can brag about what the city of Clearwater is doing. I don't want to get deep in this because I'm sure you're concerned, but it gets a little laborious. We have an unbelievable technology package that finds these anomalies. One of the big things that we bring to the table is your billing concept. Accounts payable gets the bills, they pay them, that's the way it works. I understand they've got so much going on. You may not have somebody internally that's analyzing your bills, looking at why January of 2021 was 18% higher than January of 20. There may be a reason for that, but oftentimes you find that there are billing errors that you just don't have time to look into. That's something we do. I will not say it's happening here. I see it happens all over the time, but there are times when we find that the city of X, Y, or Z has been paying the utility bills for a facility they sold 5 years ago. And it was just never in somebody's purview to where they followed up routinely to find out if that service has been transferred. Accounts payable gets the bill, they pay it. That's part of life. We're going to find those anomalies and get those fixed. There's a lot of that. This software is something that everybody has access that's outward leaning. I can go to my phone, and of course you'll get the same type of access, and find out what every building is doing with reduction. What's their carbon footprint? How many greenhouse emissions does it equal for what the library has done last year? How many trees sequestered is what your efforts are doing equating to for the environment? So it's a nicety. not a necessity for you, but it's something that we're proud of and we're proud to allow our partners to have. A little bit more about the technology. I don't want to get, I don't want to get so deep into that I glaze everybody over. But this is something that is part of the program. Sheridan and her team are going to have access at their fingertips to all the data that you're using in real time. Smart meters, I know that you have some. I know that some more are coming through the utility company. But what a smart meter does is it gives you the reading and the consumption of that meter in 15-minute intervals. We are seeing that 15-minute interval. Let me back up if I know how to do this. I don't. So we're going to get those readings. And if you can just look at the day in the life of a building, it comes on at 7 o'clock. It runs through the day, and then it's designed to go back down at 6:30, coast around to the beginning of the next day, and keep coming on. That's the cycle. Saturday and Sunday, of course, it turns off if it's unoccupied. Well, if that facility does not get back to where it's supposed to be at 6 o'clock, at 6:15, we're going to get an alert. The energy specialist is going to get an alert that says that the library is still running. We're going to go out and find out what that reason is. It may be an event, maybe one of these beautiful art shows that you're having, but if it's not, then that means there's something wrong with the equipment, there's something going on with the sensors, and if somebody's not walking through your building at 2 o'clock in the morning routinely, they'll never know that it's on, and it'll continue to run. We are in the facilities doing audits probably 80% of the time when nobody's in the building. We inspect what we expect. This is not an 8 to 5, we just go around and monitor your buildings. We are looking at them on a micromanaging level. Here's my picture, I'm sorry. So if we see that battleship looking thing, that it's supposed to come on the left-hand side about 6:30, run through the day, but that dotted green line on the right-hand side is where it is supposed to have gotten back down to, but it did not. There is an issue there. That is something that we will go look at, and we will find. That's why we've saved Pinellas County Public Schools over $47 million in energy over 7 years, I'm sorry. $47 million. That's a big number. Healthy buildings. Again, this is something that I'm passionate about. I wish I would have had this expertise. CO2 levels. We are monitoring the CO2 levels in all of your facilities. And I think, as a council member and an elected official, that it is incumbent upon us to let our citizens know that are using these facilities that we are looking after your best interest. We are monitoring what's going on in these facilities. Outside air is a huge issue with what we do, ventilation, measuring the air. It's unfortunate that over the last year and a half that people have been selling equipment that will end up being they were selling. We are a third-party, vendor-neutral company. We will advise you as you ask on any of these types of upgrades that you do. If you have construction projects, we will look at that and advise you on what we feel like is the best fit. Again, we are vendor-neutral, so we don't have a dog in the fight, but we want to make sure. And my uncle's an architect. Everybody loves architects, but a lot of times the billing is a percentage of what the total construction cost is. We'd like to give you advice on what we feel like would be the best fit for some of these upcoming projects. All right, there's some of your kids. This is one of the things, again, that I'm very passionate about. We have something called synergistic community. We're very heavy in the K-12 world, but we're getting more heavy in the municipal world at Earth Day. We like to have sustainability fairs at libraries, community centers, to where we ask the public to come in and we show you what we have been doing, the city has been doing for the environment within their area. When I was a kid, they had junior patrol 50 years ago, and I was a proud junior patrolman because I had a special little uniform and walked around the school, and I thought I was something else. We do the same thing with this program. Pinellas County has about 40,000 junior energy managers walking around their schools, and they're taking that home to their parents, I guarantee you, and saying, Mom, Dad, we don't need the air conditioner on 62 today. Do you know what that's doing to the carbon footprint? It's just something that we are very proud of, and we like to celebrate those successes. A little something about the city of Montgomery, where I came from. There's a quote down there for the mayor, and he sent a message to the world that Montgomery cared about the environment. He does not say anywhere in his quote that I told Steve Jones to go green, but he does say that this is something that we were excited about, and it is. It is something that shows the community that you are serious about the environment. Last slide there, that number's 37. That slide is a little old. I checked it just before I got up here. It's $42 million. They have reduced their energy spend over 6 years by 22%, and they've reduced their energy use per square foot by 37%. That is amazing. That is something that they are very proud of, and we're very proud to be partners with them. We feel there's no doubt that we can be successful here. We're as picky about who we do business with as you are who you do business with, and that is a true statement because our reputation is on the line. You've got with Sheridan and the team that you've got right now, right here, you're already leaning forward. You are already leaning forward, but she and I have had the conversation. She just doesn't have the capacity to touch the entire city of Clearwater. That's where we're going to come in and make that capacity work. A little bit about the finance and budget. There is no capital outlay. This is not a ESCO program to where you finance this program for 20 years. There is no capital outlay. There is no bonded indebtedness with our program. The cost of the program is completely covered by your utility savings. We split the savings, and then out of our portion, we fund the program. We fund the employees. We fund the visits. We fund every one of the Energy Star building audits and getting that to fruition. Again, it is a total partnership. If you do not succeed, we do not succeed, and that means we are invested with you. The third-party accounting software that is mentioned on the agenda is with EnergyCap. They are the leading accounting software for energy conservation. DOJ, DOE, all use that. Some say it's $16,000. Why don't you just pay that out of your portion because it's really not a large amount of money? We do not pay that. We have never paid that because we want to make sure that we are totally autonomous from the measurement and verification of this program. We're not going to tell you what we're saving you. A third-party accounting company is going to tell you what you're saving, and by you paying them, that makes sure that we're not grading our own papers. So that is the only upfront cost that we have with the program. It's been that way since the beginning, and we find that that's much more transparent than us just telling you what we've done on our own. With that, I'll open to questions, and thank you again for letting me be here. But please, if you have any questions, I'd love to talk more about what we do.
Questions? Vice Mayor?
Mr. Jones, I appreciate the presentation. I'm very impressed. I have spoke with Dr. Grego, and he is, as you say, one of the most humble people you'll ever speak with, but he is very enthusiastic about what you all are doing for him. I think this is definitely a move in the direction we need to be going. I think the number to the 16,000 is nothing, and if we can save money on the back end of it and funds the whole thing, I think your all's track record speaks for itself. So I think this is definitely a good move.
Councilmember Albrecht?
Yeah, I think this is, what really impresses me is the team that you can put together of experts. I mean, Sharon's doing a great job, but when it comes down to really picking apart where we're deficient, you've got a whole team of people that can come in, experts in each field that can tell us, where we need to do better. And that part of it I really like. It's just, I do have a question on the length of, is this a year-to-year contract? How long is this contract?
It's a 5-year contract.
It's a 5-year.
And we do that, sir, because we're going to be pushing the car uphill for the first year and a half.
Yeah.
We're going to come in and build an envelope of every one of your buildings that's, I think it's 15,000 or more square feet. So it's going to take us a while to build that envelope of all of these buildings. So we're going to be in the red for a while, which we understand, but that's the reason that we stretch it out that long.
Well, that's fine, yeah, because I know we need to have time to develop it and to get a good,
Yes.
grip on it, so.
Yes, sir.
Like what you're doing.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bunker?
A wonderful presentation. I definitely think we need to go with you, and I also just wanted to say I'm thrilled that Mr. Jennings has been eager to jump into this as well and up our green game.
Councilmember Beckman?
Well, I can barely contain myself. I'm absolutely thrilled. It's like, oh, happy day. So I'm excited. I'm wondering if we can, at future meetings, think about establishing a green fund with the millions of dollars that we're going to be saving with you and earmark those for additional savings, as if when we save 25% here and we have millions of dollars, we earmark that then for solar to help us save even more money. And so I think, that can be a future discussion. But I love what you're doing, and we've spoken with Mr. Herbeck and feel real comfortable. I had a question, though. So if you're going to be being paid by half of our savings, and you're here to fund what we need and to look at our buildings, I'm thinking, will you be looking at our buildings related to Imagine Clearwater at no extra cost and helping us make those as energy efficient as possible? And when you talk about being involved with Earth Day and public education, right, can we ask for things like, can you lead a little junior energy manager program at our rec centers in the summer and help educate some of our kids that way that might not go to the public schools? I mean, what can we ask for as far as those extra fun things?
To address your first question on Imagine Clearwater, I apologize, I'm not familiar with that, but I will, under the auspices of what we're doing, any facility that is owned by the city of Clearwater.
Okay.
If you own the city of Clearwater facility, then we will be putting our fingers on it.
As long as it's over 15,000 square feet.
No, every building.
Every building.
We're not going to go, for a community center, we're not going to go build an envelope of a 800, 900,000 square foot building. We will still be monitoring that building, but we won't get to the in-depthness because it's just not financially feasible to spend that much time building that envelope when we can just monitor it. When I say the ones that are over 15, we'll do an extensive, when I say extensive, R factor of the windows, what type of roof do you have on it? What type of systems do you have in it, so that we can play with it in a little more in-depth way. But everything that you own, we will touch. Some caveats, if you rent facilities to outside agencies, if there's something contractually with them that you have agreed to they can have the air conditioner on 24/7, that's something that we won't get into, but we follow OSHA and ASHRAE standards, and ASHRAE is the Bible on health and air conditioning monitoring. We will never degrade the comfort of a facility to save energy. So to answer that question, yes, we will put a finger on it. To the level that you want us to do public involvement, we will definitely rise to the level that you want. I will not say that we'll set up a monthly energy fair, at every community center, but we'll then be working with Sheridan on that. And if it's not one of the energy specialists doing it, we'll provide the tools and the data that we're mining from the city to Sheridan to allow her to be the face of that program. Because at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, we want this to be Clearwater's energy program, not synergistic. And that's the way it is at Pinellas. It's not the synergistic program, it's the Pinellas County Schools program.
And the person that you hire specifically for Clearwater, will that person reside here in Clearwater or work remotely? No, we'll hire somebody locally. Okay. And then, of course, whoever you deem necessary, I hate to keep saying the word Sheridan, but she's the go-to person. They will have a very strong hand in who we hire. We're not going to bring somebody from Bayonne, New Jersey into Clearwater and try to change culture. So we got to make sure it's the right fit, but we got to make sure that it's somebody that you agree with as well. Retired teachers, retired coaches, those are the kind of people that people gravitate towards. That personality that can explain while we're doing something is really what we're looking for. And so you'll train them specifically? We will train them. They will be under our guys the entire way. Okay. And then again, with you giving us some feedback about buildings we own. So we're building, Imagine Clearwater is this major park development at our waterfront that has a number of buildings, and it's slated to be completed in 23?
June of 23.
June of 23. So you could conceivably guide us a little bit in wise choices?
Yes,
as
yeah,
build
we
those
won't
buildings?
step in and be your third-party rep, but we will definitely be involved if your contractor, or not your contractor, if your city inspector has some questions about the validity or has some issues, we will definitely take a look at that and give some recommendations. We have PhDs in engineer, I mean, there's a plethora of subject matter experts that we would definitely put our hands on what you've got and give you some advice.
Thank you, thank you.
Mr. Margolis?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to underscore the point that this is a 5-year commitment. There are some pretty hefty early termination fees involved in this. I would say that are unusually harsh for government standards. And so council certainly has the ability to approve this item. This may very well prove to be a good decision, but I do want council to be aware this should be viewed as a 5-year commitment for council.
And I think the agenda item is somewhat unusual in that we're approving this software, which is $16,000. But going to your point of getting into a 5-year commitment, it is not as though you aren't making a lot of money. And I've got some questions either for Ms. Boyle or Mr. Gloucester. I don't know the RFP, what other companies were finalists, but you know, the projected savings over 5 years is $8.2 million, actually almost 8.3. Of that, the gross fee that Synergistic is going to get is $4.139 million. You know, this is not just an altruistic process. This is a cash machine. 50% I find almost, I can't stomach it. I don't know why we wouldn't do some of this in-house ourselves. You've got to tell me the value add on this and what other companies, because back in 2010, 2011, we had Honeywell go through and look at all of our buildings, and we changed thermostats so that employees couldn't change them to outrageous levels, be it 70 degrees or 80 degrees when it was cold. We put motion sensors in most of the rooms so that if it wasn't occupied, the lights were off. We looked at roofing systems and windows and everything else. So what other companies were in this process that did not float to the top?
And I think I'll turn it over to Stephen a little bit to speak more to why we might benefit more from going with them than doing it in-house and some of the experiences they've had with other municipalities. There were 2 other companies that responded to our RFP, and I will say they scored far below Synergistic, mostly because the RFP asked for a behavior-based program, right, where the city wouldn't pay for any upfront changes in equipment like we did with the Honeywell performance-based contract. And the other 2 companies that responded were basically the exact replica of our Honeywell contract, where we would pay for equipment that would then be more efficient to lower our energy bills. Where with Synergistics, they responded with our program is entirely behavior-based. And I do understand, you know, the concern about the amount with the 50-50 split. I will say that should make us feel a little bit better of they're as invested as we are, because they do make money from us making money and saving energy. And otherwise, that is money that we are continuing to pay to our utility. So otherwise, we're losing that money.
I'm fully aware.
Mm-hmm. So, Steve, would you like to speak to some of
I will, yes, Mr. Mayor, I agree. It's a number, it's a good-sized number. I will say that out of our 50% that we retain from your savings, it's going to be about 26% of that to fund this program. Between the employee, between the visits here, we will be, it's kind of an inverted funnel. We have the energy specialist at the bottom, then we have a client manager on top of him with 2 others on top of them. We'll probably be in Clearwater between 10 and 11 times a month with outside experts. So it's a, you know, it's a hands-on process to where we're going to be in the area. That's part of the funding that it takes to run this program. I totally agree with you that, and I was in the governmental world, that's a big number. But I think Sharon said it eloquently.
It wouldn't be allowed in my business.
Sorry?
50% wouldn't be allowed in my business.
Well, I would, if it was a 50% with no investment on our end, I definitely understand that. When we say 50%, we're not retaining 50% as profit. It is, but I do definitely understand that that is a large number in the
But
government.
senior net fee is 36, you're anticipating.
Yes, sir.
So that's still
Okay.
pretty sizable. So explain to me, if we have systems already in place that are, you're gonna have to help me with the behavioral improvements. When we control behavior to some extent, how does changing behavior save us money? If we don't allow, for instance, energy to be wasted by keeping lights on all night in an unoccupied building, or keeping the air down at an unrealistic, level, or too high in the winter, whatever the case may be, how does the behavioral change end up saving us money?
The behavioral change is the human aspect of monitoring all of your facilities and what your set energy plan is for set points, run times, on and off type of stuff. So when I say behavioral, I mean, today you may be relying on Honeywell equipment to tell you if it's on or off. Well, when you've got 1.8 million square feet or some number like that. So the behavioral part is humans are actually tracking, monitoring, and looking at your facilities and how they're running to make sure that they are staying within the parameters of the program. Now, on top of that, the rest of the stuff that comes with it is a behavioral component, the education, those kind of things. But when just changing the culture of somebody's mindset about how they use energy is not the savings. It's the education part. The behavioral part is we are actually monitoring all of your facilities to where they are not running at 2 o'clock in the morning or lights on in the evening. And that's where we find the savings. If we don't have somebody we find that if you don't have somebody that is constantly on top of that program, then it just becomes non-existent. So it's the component of us being in those facilities, monitoring the program, and making sure that it is adhered to. A policy that you approve, we make sure that it is stuck to.
And there's no I'm gonna finish, I let you all
No,
go,
that's
and, so, are you telling me there's not going to be any capital expenditures that we're going to have to make as you analyze our buildings? You said you're gonna look at windows and R factors and everything else. Certainly, there's gonna be some low-hanging fruit that is going to cost us capital dollars. That doesn't come out of your half.
The program that we are proposing, the numbers that the council and yourself are looking at, is as if you never replaced a piece of equipment in the city of Clearwater. Nothing that we do will we ever say, if you would have put $600,000 into the HVAC system of the library, we could have got to that number. This is completely with what you have currently. Anything that you want to do autonomous of this program, if you want to set those funds aside and do an improvement, we will adjust the baseline that we have so that we don't get any credit for any of the capital expenditure that you have put into your facilities. So nothing that we have ever proposed says we've looked at your buildings. If you make these changes, we'll be able to have a successful program. What we do is with what you currently have, and we find that just a secondary part of what we do is by running your equipment more efficient, it is actually going to last longer. So nothing that we do requires you to make any adjustments. Now, we may say that we think that this piece of equipment over here, it's about time that it gets replaced, but we will never say, if you don't do that, we're not going to be successful here.
Mr. Gloucester, if they're super successful, what is that going to say about what we've been doing for the past decade?
If they're super successful, that would say that we're lacking in certain areas in what we've been doing over the last decade. As you mentioned, we had the
Honeywell performance management contract. We changed out a lot of equipment. We changed our thinking on how we purchased HVAC equipment. LED went to LED lighting. We have a program where we're changing out all lights to LED. The thermostats you mentioned, everything that you mentioned in that performance contract has got us to where we are today. If they're super successful, technology has changed over the last decade, of course. So if they're super successful, that means we might have been lacking in some areas within that Honeywell performance contract, and I can't stand here before you today and say that we haven't been. I believe that we've gotten good savings from that contract. We got our money's worth out of it, and this may be just a logical next step based on where technology is today, my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Councilmember Bunker.
I want to thank Mr. Margolis for bringing up his point, because I did a quick Google while we've been talking here, and I'm seeing some very troubling things. So I think we need to actually consider this carefully. This is a article from the Tennessee Star from 2019 for the Fairfax County School District in Virginia. You folks said that you saved them $5 million, but you billed them $4 million. And there's a bunch of other examples in here about the same thing in Texas and Massachusetts, Florida, California. I haven't had a chance to look at all of these, but at one point, somebody on a council I was just reading had said, this is not working. We need to cancel this, and they were hit with an extremely large fine of like $145,000. And here in Connecticut in 2013, you claimed to save the district $161,000, and you took $154,000 as your cut, leaving only $7,000 for the school district. So I think we need to kind of carefully look at some of these situations.
Yeah, yes, sir. The articles that you were talking about, we have been dealing with for the past, I think, 3 years. It was an article in the Daily Caller. Tucker Carlson put out a report about Synergistic. I can send Sheridan the actual retractment of that article from the Daily Caller that was quoting the people in Fairfax. Other than on the other ones, I don't know about that. And I'd be glad to take a look at what you've got. This is a behavioral change program, and yes, organizations, when we come in and a body has said we'd like to make organizational change, there are people that aren't going to like it. That is the way it is. I would challenge you to talk to the vast majority of our clients that are successful and are happy with the program. If somebody within the organization doesn't like this because maybe it's a little more work for them, or they're not comfortable with making any changes, it doesn't take much for somebody to make a comment, and we can do nothing more than point to the people that we do business with currently and the success we've had there. I would like to see the ones that you're talking about, and I can definitely get you some answers about that.
Sure, yeah, you know, if it was something from Tucker Carlson, I wouldn't be mentioning it. But I think it's important that we take a closer look. Here's another article that you charged Antioch School District for nearly $400,000, overcharged schools $100,000 for water. That's just a headline.
Are they coming from people within the district?
I think we'll keep this off consent, and in between now and Thursday, we can get some more research, and maybe this just gets continued to another meeting. So, but I'm not ready to put this on consent. Councilmember Beckman.
So I have a couple things. When we're talking about behavioral change, especially I I'm familiar with a school, and it's interesting you mentioned Antioch, that I taught at Antioch, the Antioch Community High School in Northern Illinois, so I don't know if it's the same one, but when we had some behavioral change initiatives that came in, it was things like, look, you teachers can't have your own individual refrigerators in your classroom. You can't have your coffee makers in there. We're taking out individual rooms, printers, and having a centralized printing location. And you know, there was a cultural shift, and some people didn't like it, and you grumble, and then you get used to it. But those things are big energy suckers. And is that part of the behavioral change that you're talking about, little things like that? It's not an expense. It's a way of changing how you operate. The other thing we did was we zoned certain hallways for after-school activities. So it's like all the after-school clubs are going to meet in this wing so that we're not going to heat or cool the rest of the building, and scheduling practices certain ways and all that. So those are legitimate behavioral changes as well. The other thing I might suggest, if there is some hesitancy or there's some bad press out there, and I'm not familiar with that, you know, maybe we could ask if Dr. Grego or Clint Herbert could come and speak about their personal experience. I mean, they're right here. They've been with you for over 5 years.
Dr. Grego signed with us when he was the superintendent in Osceola 10 years ago. Came to Pinellas. It was one of the first things he did, and they just renewed again for a third year.
Okay.
So,
and then the other thing I think is, yeah,
or third contract, I'm sorry, not third year. He's been with us about 10 years.
okay, so he has long-term experience. And I would say that, you know, I agree, a 50% cut in, or pay based on savings is huge, but it's only for a 5-year contract. After that, then we're collecting all of the savings from year 5 on. It's ours exclusively, right?
It is, and we do renew like we did with Pinellas at a substantially different rate to continue our services. But again,
because the behavior change is already embedded. We've already gotten your expertise.
but we do, to the point about maybe some of those that you said, well, they paid us $400,000, but they only saved $50,000 or whatever that number was. They don't say that they saved every dime they gave us. Every dime they paid for their service, they saved. So if they paid us $400,000, and I'm being hypothetical on this number, that means they had to have saved $450,000 gross. So they got all the services that we provided, all of that for free, and then we gave them $50,000. You know, they made $50,000 on top of that. So any of those that you see, and again, there's only a handful of these out there, but it will happen. If energy rates change, if there is a mass influx or increase in your energy rate, we don't control that. But contractually, the contract that Owen has looked at, we guarantee that you will never pay us a dime more than you save. You'll never be in the red. So yes, they may not net the same thing that we made, but we have provided all of the service they received. Every dime of that they got back. So there may be instances, a few that are, I don't want to say upside down, but your net savings is not what our fee is, but your gross savings contractually definitely is.
Okay. You know, it's just, we think if $5 million is saved, $2.5 million would be ours. And you're saying that's not the case. The net could be substantially lower than that, while you would be guaranteed $2.5 million.
You would be guaranteed, if you paid us $2.5 million for our services, you would be guaranteed $2.5 million. But if you do have a program that does not embrace what you're doing, so if you have a city or a district that says, we don't want to do this, we're not, from the upper management, we're not going to enforce it, yeah, you're not going to get the 25% that Pinellas has got. If this is not an all-in from the administration that says this is what we're going to do, then if you just quit halfway through and say we don't really care about the program, the teachers or the employees can do whatever they want with the energy, we're definitely not going to see the savings. And those may be examples of organizations that just said we don't care anymore.
And don't get me wrong, my skepticism is not because I don't want to save money. If we can save money and make our buildings more efficient, I'm just wondering if your company is the best way to do it. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item 3.1.
Accept the 2021 Local Housing and Incentive Strategy Report developed by the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. Mr. Lane.
Thank you, Chuck Lane, Economic Development and Housing Department. We receive an annual allocation from the State Housing Initiative Partnership Program funds, and for that reason, we are required to assemble an Affordable Housing Advisory Committee now annually. Councilmember Beckman is the council-appointed member to sit on that committee. The committee's role is to evaluate land use regulations, ordinances, our comprehensive plan, and any other city policies or procedures that might affect the cost of housing or that might deter a developer from building affordable or workforce housing. There's not much flexibility in the process that's laid out by statute that we need to follow. The committee is required to, at minimum, evaluate 11 specific criteria to make recommendations on how or whether the city should make any policy adjustments to produce more effective results in any of those 11 areas. What I'd like to do is roll through each of the 11 criteria and briefly explain the committee's recommendations. Understand this is the 5th time we've assembled the committee to review the same criteria, so in many cases, the committee's recommendations is to continue with recommendations made by previous committees. The committee's recommendations are written into the city's local housing incentive strategy report as an update. So this is why it's provided to you in a strike-through and underlined form. So the first area of focus we need to look at, the process of approvals of development orders or permits for affordable housing projects is expedited to a greater degree than other projects. So this is already in place. However, it's always a very healthy discussion with the committee. The projects that qualify as affordable workforce housing, they get top priority in the review process. The committee had a healthy discussion about permitting turnaround times for single-family homes. So they recommended that we strive and memorialize that we are striving to complete initial permit reviews for single-family homes within 4 days and all follow-up reviews within 3 days. So that's been written into the report. The committee recommended one more thing that I think will help in this area. Habitat for Humanity is a very good example of a developer that will use building designs multiple times at various locations. They do some custom builds, but mostly their designs have already been approved by council. So the recommendation was to encourage these types of developers to submit frequently used design plans for pre-screening by the building official. So when when a pre-screened design comes in for an actual permit review, it'll be a much quicker review. So I think that's a very good suggestion made by the committee. So the second area of focus, the modification of impact fee requirements, including the reduction or waiver of fees and alternative methods of fee payment for affordable housing. Every year, the committee urges us to make progress in this area, and it's always a very healthy discussion. So we do have some progress to report. The Parks and Recreation Department is creating a new impact fee structure, and as staff seeks approval for that impact fee structure, I believe staff is going to recommend waiver of that fee for affordable housing projects that qualify as such. The Planning and Development Department is also working on a text amendment to the Community Development Code that will provide for a reduction in building permit fees for qualifying projects. Planning staff will present this to the Community Development Board later this month and to City Council in January. The Economic Development and Housing Department, we're going to create a policy where we can use housing funds when applicable and when appropriate to assist with the portion of the developer fees and impact fees that the developer may still have to pay. So the next area of focus, the allowance of flexible densities for affordable housing. That's already in place. We provide a density bonus for qualifying projects. The text amendment to the Community Development Code that I mentioned earlier will include language that will clarify that density bonus. I think it needs a little bit of clarification. Next is the reservation of infrastructure capacity for low to moderate income persons. There are no recommendations in this area. The city's infrastructure is not identified as a barrier to affordable housing. The city's very built out, infrastructure is largely in place, as you know. The allowance of affordable accessory residential units in residential zoning districts. So this is always a strong area of focus, and planning staff is working through our comp plan. It'll be something that is an initiative of theirs. Staff will be supporting wider scale eligibility of lots for accessory dwelling units throughout the city. So more to come on that. Next is the reduction of parking and setback requirements for affordable housing. This is already provided for by our code. Next would be the modification of street requirements for affordable housing. Again, no recommendation. We have a very built-out street grid. It is not a barrier to affordable housing. The establishment of a process by which a local government considers before adoption policies, procedures, ordinances, regulations, or plan provisions that might increase the cost of housing. Changes to city policy are always vetted by the senior executive team, so the Economic Development and Housing Director and I always view these things through the lens of, are they going to affect the cost of housing? The preparation of a printed inventory of locally owned public lands suitable for affordable housing, this is already in place. It's actually a statutory requirement. Council approves a list of city-owned properties every 3 years. The list is due to be updated this spring. I'll come to you this spring with that list. When discussing this focus area with the committee, I explained that we're developing a lot disposition procedure for lots suitable for single-family homes. It'll be a transparent, competitive process for developers to acquire lots that are on this list of city-owned properties. So I plan to present this procedure to council early in 2022. And lastly, the supported development near transportation hubs and major employment centers and mixed-use developments. This is already provided by our code, so a recommendation was not necessary. So that's the 11 required criteria. The committee also has the flexibility to make recommendations outside of these 11 areas. So there are some additional things that the committee, recommendations that the committee has made and that previous committees have made and the 2021 committee has supported. So, for example, the city should continue to allow and encourage adaptive reuse projects, such as converting an underutilized non-residential structure for housing. The committee encouraged us to market our programs. We recently configured our website for affordable housing and community development, and I think it's very much improved. So there was quite a bit of work, quite a bit of discussion around us working to drive people to that website, and I think we could do a better job at that, working with our public communications department. Recently, we've seen developers negotiate with private property owners to purchase land only to find municipal code liens on the property that make the property unmarketable or difficult to purchase. The committee asked staff to evaluate the feasibility of creating a strategy to help in this area. So I have some ideas. I'll be working with City Manager Jennings on implementation along those lines. We always get great feedback from the committee on program adjustments we might consider. Developing partnerships with developers is always a focus of discussion. The committee has productive discussion. Staff benefits a great deal from the 3 meetings that we have annually. So that's a summary of all the recommendations in the report. At the staff level, we did not review any of these recommendations as particularly onerous. As you can see, many of the criteria we're required to review is already addressed by our code. So we have some work to do to develop, implementing some of these other recommendations, but I think we're in a pretty good place. And next year, that committee will again hold us accountable. So following approval of this item on Thursday, the work of the 2021 AHAC committee is complete, and the committee will automatically sunset. So with that, I'll take any questions, please.
These seem like really reasonable, common sense moves. Questions? Councilmember Beckman?
Thanks, Chuck, and thanks for all that work on this really important committee that I enjoy being on. I had a question about under evaluation of existing strategy. And so clearly ADUs are not the same as tiny homes. They're not classified the same way?
No, tiny homes could be potentially used as an ADU, but no, they're not.
Okay, and then how many ADUs does Clearwater have, and what zoning districts are they in? Do we know that?
I don't know the answer to that. They're allowed by our code, but it's very restricted because you have to have the right lot area to do it. Mm-hmm. So for all intents and purposes, they're more or less not allowed by our code.
And that's what I wanted to be clear on, because it says the city allows for the provision of ADUs in non-residential zoning districts, including, and then they go, and industrial research and technology districts as described in the Community Development Code, but we don't have any. I'm not aware of any that we.
Yeah, I can find out how many we have or try to see if we have that data. I don't know off the top of my head.
So would that be conceivably, if it's allowed in our IRT area, so off Hercules or something, would that mean that if one of those warehouses could have an ADU next to it where somebody could live in an accessory dwelling unit and work in that light industrial
I mean, to me, ADUs have always been associated with an existing residential structure.
That's what I,
Whether or not that qualifies, I'd have to check the planning and development. I'm not positive of that.
okay, because the city allows for these things, ADUs, in non-residential, but not, you know,
Well, we do allow residential development in non-residential areas through comp and fill and otherwise. So it is, I think that's why it's written that way. And that language actually from the state.
okay, okay. But it would be good if we knew if we do have any and where they are. And then, at the top of a page we have, there has been little momentum to allow ADUs in residential zoning districts, in part due to citizen concerns about neighborhood compatibility. And one of my comments is this anecdotal or documented? Do we have, how do we know that people don't really
I
want?
believe, and I don't know if anyone from planning and development is here this evening, but I think the last time we went through this and had this discussion, there was community feedback. It is not a simple thing to implement. There are a lot of considerations with on-street parking, you require additional parking. There are a lot of things that people, get concerned about when we start talking about ADUs. So it's not going to be an easy discussion, I don't think.
No, I don't, I agree, but I just didn't know if it was, some anecdotal or documented, if we had significant feedback about it. And then, the language that says as part of its annual reporting, the Economic Development and Housing Department should continue to review all regulations and ordinances that may affect the cost of housing. And is it our agreement with our eye that we want to be super competitive with surrounding municipalities, to be seen as really welcoming, serious, innovative leaders in attracting affordable housing developers?
Absolutely. I mean, we don't want to put ourselves in a disadvantage with other communities in terms of attracting development and the right development. And I think that the compact that you know of, the housing compact with the municipalities throughout Clearwater, I mean, I think that's a mechanism where we can have these discussions to say, hey, let's do this countywide. And then, if we have particular requirements, the others do too. It doesn't put us at a disadvantage.
Are those conversations starting to happen at that county level for that compact?
The county actually hasn't signed it yet. I believe they're due to sign it in January. So we haven't had a meeting since we last presented the compact. But I'll keep you posted.
Okay. And then there's some language that future updates to the inventory list may include lots not zoned residential that may be appropriate for affordable housing. We had that conversation about a list of vacant, underdeveloped, or underutilized areas. I mean, not like vacant, but it will include lots and zoned residential, right? Are we going to start to list those out for potential developers?
If they're appropriate for residential development, absolutely.
They will be.
And we do have it. North Garden Ave is a perfect example. It's a lot of it's zoned commercial, but it's a residential community. We've built residential homes in there, and if we actually had a property on our list on that property in that neighborhood.
Okay. All right. And then, yeah, this is another. The Economic Development and Housing Department should continue to maintain the inventory of publicly. That just means you will. You already are, and you're going to continue.
We're required to by state
Yeah.
statute.
Okay, so they will. Yeah, and then. And then I guess we do have a list of properties, then what do we do with it? Whom do we share it with? And this is where you talked about partnering with our communications department to more heavily promote all that stuff that's out there.
Yeah, it's required to be on our website, and we do maintain it on our website. It's been updated in the last couple months. And we certainly direct people to it when people are looking for properties. Mm-hmm. We'll let people know it's there.
What about reaching out to, I know we've got the local nonprofit like Going Home Coalition and others to see if they'd like to rehab some of these homes that are potentials for foreclosure, or even, thinking outside the box, reaching out to different churches or nonprofits to see if they'd like to take that home and rehab it and turn it over to sell it or whatever, to a lower income family.
Yeah, there's something we really haven't explored deeply that I think is a really good idea, is to look to our faith-based communities, because a lot of them want to assist. We've actually had some of our folks in our rehab program benefit from faith-based communities in conjunction with our investment. So we have some experience there, but I think it's a really good point that we could explore that more deeply.
And and one last thing, I was thinking like using First Rung and St. Pete College. So we've got First Rung right here in Clearwater, North Greenwood, right? People getting educated about construction field. And what if they had one of our dilapidated homes that they used to learn and work on and then sell for a little profit, sell at a reasonable rate. But anyway, I think there's potential there for some innovation. And then one last question. We have a note here, and I think you've answered this for me before, but I forgot. Of note, under Florida House Bill 1339, June of 2020, local governments may now approve affordable housing development by right on any parcel zoned for residential, industrial, or commercial use, right? So that means those ADUs or tiny homes could go multiple places?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that generally speaks to development. What Florida Housing wants is to increase the availability of land for housing. We do allow in our code residential development in areas not zoned residential. So that's already in place. I mean, it's a bit more of an arduous process for the developer, but that is in place, and it's been in place for a while.
So that means those tiny homes or ADUs could go almost anywhere?
Well, I think we need to, once our comp plan update is done, hopefully we'll be able to expand the use. Right now, it's very limiting because you have to have the land area to do so. And the lion's share of lots don't qualify.
Because of our comp plan, okay.
But that can be fraught with unintended consequences. I mean, when you put residential right next to industrial or something else, obviously we didn't have residents that didn't want industrial next to their residence. And now you're talking about putting residential next to industrial. And then they may forget that they came second and then want the industrial to go away. But Councilmember Bunker and then the Vice Mayor.
I just wanted to thank you and the staff for working on the ADU situation. That's something that I've been passionate about. I lived in an ADU in LA, in the Los Feliz Hills with a great view of the Griffith Observatory and the Hollywood sign. So an ADU doesn't need to be something that's ugly or trash a neighborhood. The one complaint that I've seen since we were elected was one letter from a woman who was concerned about parking issues, and I think that's valid. So I'm sure the staff is taking that into account to make sure that whatever gets approved, there would need to be ample space for parking there. And I've talked to Mr. Jennings and shared some videos of a very successful program in Detroit. I'd like to see us working toward helping more people get into an affordable home, and turning this into something that can continue to generate some income to create more of these type of communities. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Number one, is this report, does it have to be presented at the meeting Thursday night, or can it go on consent?
Public hearing.
It has public hearing, okay. And I'm going to kind of present the opposite side. This is affordable housing and tiny homes is very much a NIMBY issue. Because, for example, I'll put this out there. If we wanted to rezone or change and take the little pocket park over on Sand Key and put tiny homes on it, I think you'd have some uproar from the residents of Sand Key. At least the residents on Sand Key that I know. So it's, and again, with the tiny homes, we are in a much more high-rise urban area. That's true. transportation-wise, we don't have a good public transportation system because of our geographic configuration and with big body of water between us and Tampa and whatnot. And when you have almost everybody has their own personal vehicle in our area, which means you have a tiny home, but you still got to park 2 cars, for that tiny home. That takes extra space, and it makes the configuration and the development of this a little bit more difficult. Not something we can't work on, but logistically there are, as the mayor put it, unintended consequences as you move these things forward, and we've got to make sure that those are thoroughly vetted before you pull the trigger on it. So.
Well, I live in a neighborhood that has garage
Auxiliary
apartments
apartments.
almost throughout the entire neighborhood. And I will tell you, our neighbor at one time, not our current, did rent illegally the garage apartment. It was a nightmare. The parking really was a problem. And we had people running through our backyard every day to a parking lot that was close by until we ultimately had to put up a fence for that very reason. At the same time, I think we've got a problem in our code that we don't allow accessory structures, for in-law accommodations, because as people age and you want to have family members on your property, that's something we're really not very accommodative of. I think it's something that needs to be looked at, but I think we need to do it in a thoughtful way. So, all right, 3.2.
Approve the City of Clearwater's fiscal year 2020-21 Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report. Lane.
Thank you. I'll be using a brief PowerPoint to present to you our Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report. The acronym, of course, is the CAPER. So the CAPER is a report of our activity with the use of federal funds, which are Community Development Block Grant Program funds and Home Investment Partnership Program funds. The narrative of the report, of the narrative sections of the report, we discuss our use of state and local funds as well. It helps to give a more accurate picture of the body of work that we do in the housing division. It was a challenging year. For the first 3 months of the fiscal year, as you know, we worked exclusively, all hands on deck, with our rent, mortgage, utility, emergency assistance program. So it cut out a good portion of the year. For the remainder of the year, our work was affected by a very difficult construction industry climate. As a result, any construction-related activities, such as new construction or rehab, were heavily affected. So this slide shows you the money we spent on the federal side. Our federal expenditures totaled about $2.1 million. Our spending on the federal side, particularly with the home program, was down. Our public service program seemed to carry on and spend the funds down as usual. But as I said earlier, we struggled to complete construction contracts and projects in the current year. So we have a decent amount of funding that will carry over to the current fiscal, which is important because we have some pretty large projects that we're hoping to be funded in the current year. So this slide shows the money spent on the state and local side. We spent about $457,000 in State Housing Initiative Partnership Program funds. This was mostly program income. If you remember, Governor DeSantis vetoed the statewide SHIP allocation earlier at the beginning of that fiscal. We still have a small balance of Pinellas County Housing Trust Fund money that comes in very handy for us. And as you know, we contribute annually to 6 homeless service providers with a total amount of about $250,000. So we always need to track those we assist. It's a requirement of the program. We fund 2 organizations from micro enterprise technical assistance. Through these two partnerships, we assisted 59 small businesses and entrepreneurs. Of the 3 single-family homes, actually we completed 4 single-family homes in FY20. 1 was funded with home funds, and we assisted 70 households with home buyer education, which is a very tight, important part of our down payment assistance program. The lion's share of the people we assist is always through our public service partners. So these are the folks we assisted using state and local funds. We funded the rehabilitation of 9 units. In June, we increased the down payment assistance subsidy because the market was really limiting any chance of our success in that program. This seemed to help because in the last quarter, we processed 3 down payment assistance loans. 2 of them were down payment assistance only, and one of the new homes we funded was sold to a household that benefited from a down payment assistance loan. So these are our partners. I think you're very familiar with many on this screen. Hope Villages of America, formerly RCS, does a number of things in our city. Domestic violence. They have a food pantry. They have a family shelter. They also do some affordable housing. Directions for Living does a lot of case management for us and street outreach. West Care certainly helps a lot of folks with substance abuse issues. Kimberly Home helps expecting pregnant women and also young mothers. Gulf Coast Legal Services were very valuable this year. They help people with legal issues surrounding housing during the pandemic when people were facing evictions. That was a very critical resource. Maddie Williams, Neighborhood Family Centers, they administer programs to help families with school readiness and financial stability. HEP, Homeless Empowerment Program, they're a staple in our community with providing homeless services and shelter. Intercultural Advocacy Institute, also known as Hispanic Outreach Center, they're a big part of our downtown helping Hispanic families. Community Kitchen and Resource Center, they've been in our in our downtown gateway for a number of years with feeding, helping families struggling. PERC helps folks that provide education for ex-offenders, trying to reduce recidivism. Fresh Start Ministries is also in that category. Pinellas Opportunity Council's Shore Services Program, they help elderly folks that are no longer able to care for their home. And Miracles Outreach, they help folks, children that have been displaced from their homes. So you can see we have a very diverse array of services that are made available to our residents through our CDBG program. So these are the partners that provide homebuyer education classes, and all 3 also partner with us on processing down payment assistance. Tampa Bay CDC, I'll have to change that logo. They are now Suncoast Housing Connections. And the micro enterprise partners I mentioned earlier are Tampa Bay Black Business Investment Corporation. They have a heavy presence in the North Greenwood area. I think you all are familiar with the CATCH program that they educate entrepreneurs and new business owners. The Hispanic Business Initiative Fund of Florida, also known as Prospera, they primarily assist Hispanic business owners in our downtown gateway area. We completed a facility rehab project in a program here with the ARC of Tampa Bay. They are an organization that assists people with intellectual and developmental challenges. We're working on a facility rehab with the Salvation Army as well. That project has carried over to the current fiscal year. And we also worked on public facility projects with Directions for Living, Hope Villages of America, and HEP. So these are the partners we work with on our housing projects. We completed actually 2 homes with Habitat for Humanity, a home with Clearwater Neighborhood Housing Services, and another with Emerge Community Development Corporation. We helped Community Services Foundation to rehabilitate a duplex on Tangerine Street in North Greenwood, a great looking project. It's now occupied by 2 very low-income households. That's below 50% of area median income, and it's part of the Going Home Coalition. We funded the rehabilitation of 7 units in Lexington Club at Renaissance Square. Our investment, that's on Missouri Ave, 1200 Missouri Ave. Our investment is a very small portion of a much larger rehab project of 240 units. It's an $11 million project to rehab the interior and exterior of all the units, which is an extremely difficult project to do. The project has had some challenges, but thankfully they are nearing completion. So this home was built by Habitat for Humanity at 691 Blanchby Littlejohn Trail. These folks might have some neighbors soon because we anticipate additional homes to be built on the block adjacent to this house. This is directly across the Pinellas Trail from the 12-unit project we completed a couple years ago with Habitat. And some projects that are carrying over and ongoing in the current fiscal, we're working on, I think, 4 units, new single-family homes. Our homeowner rehabilitation program, we currently have 3 projects in the bid phase. We really had to set back that program because of COVID. Restarted it. I think we made some improvements to it. And on the rental side, you all know about the Blue Sky project in downtown, the 171-unit mixed income project on South Washington. I think we're finding a way to move forward on that. As Ms. Thompson told you earlier in her CRA meeting, she'll come to you with an update shortly. And then came to you last week with the rehab at Palmetto Park Apartments, very critical apartment complex in the North Greenwood neighborhood. That hopefully hasn't closed yet, but it's hopefully moving forward. Mentioned Lexington Club at Renaissance Square, and we're also renovating a duplex in the downtown gateway where on the Kimberly Homes campus. And for COVID-related activities, you're all well aware of the rent assistance program that we managed at the beginning of the fiscal. We processed about $850,000 in assistance, helped about 250 people. And our public service program is also an area where we're helping folks with COVID. Directions for Living, they helped a lot of the folks in Prospect Towers. And you're all well aware of that issue, people being displaced with a new investor coming in and raising rents. So we have a contract with them to help avoid homelessness and get those people rehoused. And Gulf Coast Legal Service, I mentioned earlier, a very important part of COVID response for some of our folks facing legal issues. So the caper is available for viewing on our website, the Community Development and Affordable Housing webpage. You can get to it directly by going to myclearwater.com/housing. The meat and bones of that report is on pages 15 to 34, where we discuss the activities undertaken during the report year. So with that, I'll take any questions, please.
Any questions for Mr. Lyon? Councilmember Beckman.
Of all those partners, the social service providers and people organizations we partner with, do most of them need more funding?
I think they would always tell you yes. I do. So tough question to answer, but yeah, particularly on the homeless side, and there's a lot of things where folks need help, no question.
And so we allocate $250,000 from our general fund that you distribute to some of those service providers.
That's outside of what we do with CDBG. That's something different.
Right.
6 specific homeless service providers,
Right.
including the HLA.
And I think, earlier in the year, I had advocated for more money from our general fund that you could utilize for those providers who all need more money. And it wasn't approved. But as we look towards next year, and I advocate again, I think it's important to know, I'm a pretty competitive person, and so I'd like, I think we need to be aware of what are the surrounding municipalities contributing, what are they doing, are we doing our part, are we seen as leaders, are we doing our fair share, and in helping, I know we are with all the other funds. I'm talking more about our allocations from general fund, which isn't up to you. It's up to you what you want to do with it, but I just want to put that out there going forward. I think I'm not going to stop asking for.
With our public service program, we're limited to spending 15% of our allocation on public services with CDBG. This year, we had an infusion of program income because we converted another funding source to CDBG. So it allowed us to step up a lot, probably by about 30–40%. So we're able to fund these public service programs at a higher level in the current year, which everybody was very excited about. To help.
Anything else? 4.1. Thank you, Mr. Lyon.
Thank you.
Award a contract for the other post-employment benefits, actuarial services for the 5-year period ending December 31st, 2026 to Gabriel Roeder, Smith and Company for a not-to-exceed total of $72,730 and authorize the appropriate officials to execute the same.
Thank you, Mr. Jennings. Good morning, Mayor and Council members. Jay Ravens, Finance Director. We are requesting approval of a 5-year agreement for other post-employment benefits, or OPEB, actuarial services with Gabriel Roeder Smith and Company for a not-to-exceed total of $72,730. The city is required to have a full actuarial valuation, at least biannually, to determine the city's OPEB liability. A reduced scope roll-forward valuation is allowed every other year if there has been no significant changes in OPEB benefits assumptions or experience. The city's OPEB benefits consist of an implicit subsidy for retiree health insurance due to inclusion of retirees in the city's group health insurance plan as required by state statute. Additionally, some retirees are provided a $1,000 life insurance benefit. Request for proposal, or RFP, number 4721 was issued in August. The RFP selection committee unanimously chose Gabriel Roeder-Smith from the 8 respondents for OPEB services. Gabriel Roeder-Smith has been the actuary for the OPEB plan since January 2010 and has consistently provided high-quality services on a timely basis.
Any questions for Mr. Ravens? Consent?
Yes.
4.2.
Approve a 3-year renewal to the current Corvell Healthcare Corporation's agreement for the review of workers' compensation, medical bills, and pharmacy benefit management services in the not-to-exceed amount of $200,000 for the term January 1, 2022 through December 31st, 2024, pursuant to Clearwater Code of Ordinances, Section 2.563, workers' compensation, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute the same. Mr. Osorio.
Thank you, Mr. Jennings. Good morning. Rick Osorio, Risk Manager. Risk Management currently has an agreement with Corvell which ends December 31st, 2021. Corvell provides the city with medical network solutions which include bill review and pharmacy benefits for our workers' compensation claims. Previously, Council approved the current pricing agreement with Corvell, which was an amendment to the original amendment or agreement. And for this renewal, Corvell has proposed a 3-year amendment to the original agreement, which will increase the following: bill review service fee from $7.32 to $7.54. Field telephonic case management and nurse file reviews will increase from $85 to $96 per hour. Bill reduction will remain at 28% of savings, with the minimum transaction fee being $6.03. And the check writing fee will go from $4 to $4.12. Our pharmacy benefit savings will change from 7 to 8% on brand drugs, 12% to 25% on generic, 12% for brand mail order, and 35% for generic mail order. Staff is requesting a not-to-exceed amount of $200,000 for the 3-year period from January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2024. The Risk Management Division is respectfully requesting renewal of this agreement with Corvell Corporation.
Any questions? Councilmember Beckman.
So all of this is related only to a firm who reviews our worker compensation claims and medical related to our worker compensation claims?
Yes, specifically medical expenses.
And pharmacy.
And, yeah, they're also a pharmacy benefit manager. So.
Okay. And about how many workers' comp claims do we have a year about?
Well, that's a good question. It all depends on what kind of year we're having. For example, we paid out $770,000 in medical bills or in work comp claims for this last fiscal year that just ended. Previously, we paid $1.4 million. Claims can range for workers' comp from anywhere from 48 to 78, but it all depends on the severity of each. Some of them are only medical-only claims, where it's a one-and-done to bay care, urgent care. Others are more complicated, where defense counsel has to be involved, and so they can get pretty expensive sometimes. So.
Well, I'm thinking like an individual claimant. So do we have like maybe 50 a year or 20 a year or?
Individual claims?
Yeah.
Yeah, 30 to 50, depending on what kind of year we're having.
Okay.
So.
And then I don't know what this means. In the second paragraph, you said bill reduction will remain at 28% of savings. I don't know what that means.
Basically, the Corvell has their own kind of PPO network and relationship with medical providers. So typically, they work with them to reduce the charges that they have, and then these charges that they're processing are then adjudicated against the Florida state fee schedule because workers' comp is a statutory coverage or benefit. The state of Florida puts out basically a template of allowable fees per medical services being rendered.
I got that.
It's also specific to zip code too. So the 28% has remained stable for us, so that's what they're able to save from each medical service provided.
Okay, as they review it, they
Yes,
save
ma'am.
us a minimum of 28%. Got
Yeah.
it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
No, this is, I mean, if you can give me accurate numbers on what will fall under the next 3 years of this contract, you and I need to talk about some lottery numbers.
Yeah.
Because, that every year is different.
Yes.
So basically, we're working off of past history and
Yes.
and everything else to develop this. But this is a not-to-exceed number. Anything, if we get an anomaly and it's higher than that, you've got to come back for more money anyways, correct?
Yes, we've been averaging about 60,000, and this is just for administrative fees. This is not for claims medical payments. That's a whole separate function and allocated amount. This is just for administrative services provided by Corval. But typically, they stayed within 60,000 per year range. Yeah.
Consent?
Yes.
5.1.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Approve a locally funded agreement between the State of Florida Department of Transportation and the City of Clearwater to fund $250,000 of design fees for the State Road 60 pedestrian overpass from the Courtney Campbell Trail to the Bayshore Trail, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute the same. Mr. Hallius.
Thank you, Mr. Jennings. Jim Hallios, Director of Parks and Recreation. Good morning, Mayor, Council. The item before you is for a funding agreement between the State of Florida Department of Transportation and the City of Clearwater to fund $250,000 of design fees. Back in 2016, the council at that time approved supporting the Sun Trail funding of the Courtney Causeway Campbell Trail. And part of that agreement is the manager at the time was given authority to do the necessary right-of-way transfers. And also, we desire to be part of the design and funding of the project. So right now, what we're looking to do is we've committed to $1 million, but 250,000 of that million will go to design, with the remaining 750,000 to be sent at a later date for construction. And the anticipated design of the project total is roughly $2 million, and that will take approximately 1 year. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Hallios? Councilmember Albritton.
Yeah, I've been following this through Fort Pinellas on the TIP, and when I was looking at the conceptual drawing, which I have with me, I was kind of surprised that it was as big as it is, because I always thought that from maybe looking at former designs that it was just basically an overpass to get over 60, and I didn't realize that it went so far to the west and to the east as a ramp. So anyway, I guess this is the design that DOT came up with?
Yes, we've actually we've went back and forth with some input a number of times. Kind of one of on that iteration that you see with the columns on there.
Yeah.
That was per our request. The initial designs had a lot of almost a cement wall with few columns in the middle, where we came back and we're like, listen, if we're going to need this such an extensive ramp up on both sides, then we at least need to provide some side alternatives going through. So that was kind of the happy medium that we were able to meet in the middle to minimize those site impacts. Again, it still is large, but that has to do with the amount of clearance needed to get up there.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Well, I'm guessing, I'm looking at the drawing that you have, that's how it has to be designed to meet ADA requirements.
Yes.
Either that or you're gonna put an elevator in on both sides to take somebody's bike up.
You don't want to do that.
Yeah, and I think that was kind of part of, one of the iterations had that in there, and when we talked about the maintenance responsibility that would fall on us and the costs, that was outweighed.
Okay.
Or you put in a light and make people cross it. But God forbid common sense break out. Are we helping with the Harn Boulevard, US 19 crossing?
I believe so, but that's through engineering, so Ms. Kibble, we need to speak to that.
Tara, are we helping with that? I guess I'm surprised how much we're on the hook for this. This really seems like it ought to be an FDOT project.
Yes, Tara Kivett Engineering, we are not contributing funds that I'm aware of. We are working with them on putting up one of the signs, because it's kind of like the southern entrance into City of Clearwater.
But that's
So
something we want.
that's, of course, what we're paying for. So I've seen the draft agreement. We will be maintaining the Harn pedestrian overpass, but we are not funding it.
Did we fund the Enterprise overpass?
Not that I'm aware of.
So what's the precedent here? Why isn't this coming out of enhancement dollars, which is where the entire trail came from? Why are we on the hook for this?
Basically, for the aesthetic piece, we wanted a say, since it was into the entryway into the city, of how the overpass would look. And not just in speaking to the Collins, but there'll be bump outs for observation decks, so we wanted a say in what was going to be put in the entryway to Clearwater versus getting just basically a concrete structure dropped in there that did not have any aesthetic relevance to it as far as sight lines and how things would look.
I think this is a ridiculous project. I don't know why they're not, pedestrians aren't crossing at Patel Boulevard. We make people cross on East Avenue, which is a terrible crossing. I don't know. I don't want to put this on. I'm not going to vote for this, so I'm not putting it on consent. Councilmember Beckman.
So I'm not, familiar with the numbers or haven't looked at, but are we paying just for the upgrade to make it the way we want it aesthetically? And FDOT is paying for the bulk of it?
Yeah, we've gone through design, but I can tell you that an initial conceptual costs of the project 2 years ago was $7 million.
Okay.
So for the total cost, with the way things have went up, I shudder to think what it would cost now, but we are locked in at the $1 million contribution regardless of what the total project cost is for that.
And that's it?
Yes.
$1 million?
Mm-hmm.
That's it?
Well, out of our whole budget, we have a park that's over $90 million. But
Is Safety Harbor contributing to this? Because it connects into their trail too.
I do not believe so.
I'm sure they are, yeah. Okay. We'll talk about that further on Thursday. 5.2.
Approve a template for facility use agreement between the City of Clearwater and the Clearwater Horseshoe Club, Clearwater Lawn Bowls Club, and the Clearwater Shuffleboard Club for the use and supervision of certain city-owned buildings and facilities from January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2022, with a one-year renewal option, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute the same. Mr. Lockwood.
Good morning, Mayor, City Council, City Managers. Mike Lockwood, Assistant Director for Parks and Recreation. In front of you this morning is a facility use template agreement, which staff will use to manage the Horseshoe, Lawn Bowls, and Shuffleboard clubs, facilities. These organizations provide day-to-day support to city facilities and provide a unique opportunity to residents and visitors throughout the year. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Lockwood? No. Consent?
Yeah.
Councilmember Beckman?
yeah, can we see the annual reports mentioned in the legislative text? So lawn bowling, shuffleboard, and horseshoe are supposed to provide annual reports, okay?
Yeah.
And then, can we also know the estimated value of the landscaping, maintenance, and capital improvements to the properties? So how much are we contributing as well? I'm just thinking about, if we have in green print, we want to increase community gardens in our community, how much might we be contributing to something like that in relationship to these kinds of community engagement activities? That's all.
Sure, no problem.
Thanks.
Consent?
Yes.
5.3.
Authorize guaranteed maximum price proposals to Keystone Excavators Inc. of Oldsmobile, Florida, in the amount of $2,151,361.10, and Certus Builders of Bristol, Florida, in the amount of $431,991, each of which includes a 10% contingency for renovations and improvements of Del Oro Park, a new trailhead located at 401 North McMullen Booth Road pursuant to the request for qualifications 40-20, construction manager at Risk Services, continuing contracts, capital improvement projects, transfers of $786,000 from ENST 180005, Coastal Basin $400,000 from the C2209 Neighborhood Parks, and $1,050,000 from 93272 Bicycle Trails Bridges to project 93667 Del Oro Park renovations, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute the same.
Good morning, Mayor, Council. Jim Halios again, Director of Parks and Recreation. This item that we have before you is for the renovation and construction of a new trailhead at Del Oro Park with a total project cost of roughly $2.6 million. $786,000 of that 2.6 is funded out of stormwater funds, with the remaining funds being utilized through our neighborhood park CIP and our bicycle trails and bridges project. If council will remember, we acquired 2 parcels of property just to the north of Del Oro Park, where there is a wastewater treatment plant, or water, I believe it's a county. And so we're going to construct a parking lot there that will be a trailhead with a bathroom, and then stormwater is going to need to come in and do some work to mitigate some areas of flooding that was affecting the homes to the south portion of that park. And per that, we're going to go ahead and move the tennis courts and the basketball court a little further north, and then we're going to reuse the existing infrastructure, which are the light poles that exist in that park that are already there for the basketball and tennis courts at the new locations. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Halios? Councilmember Beckman.
So this seems like a fantastic location and a great use of funds to address multiple issues. I just wondered, do you have like a visual representation sketched out of what it's going to look like when things get moved around, or not yet?
We have some landscape plans that would probably, more of a CAD drawing that we could show you, that would show the new footprints of where things are going to be, but as far as what any of the structures are going to look like, we do not have any conceptual plans for that.
Just wondered, thank you.
Well, I appreciate all the give and take that occurred with the neighborhood. I know there were some different iterations, and we made some concessions to make it more appealable to the residents that use it on a daily basis. Consent?
Yes.
All right, we're going to take a 5-minute recess. We'll reconvene the work session. We're on item 6.1.
Approve an ancillary agreement with Axon Enterprises, Inc. of Scottsdale, Arizona, in the amount of $375,074.99 for the purchase of additional body camera equipment, digital evidence storage, and management licensing and training in accordance with the City Code of Ordinances. Chief Slaughter.
Chief Dan Slaughter with the Police Department. Good morning, Council. You had pretty well aware of the history of our implementation of a body-worn camera program. In 2020, we purchased 200 cameras. Those cameras were used to outfit our sergeants and our officers that work in uniform assignments. We are seeking now to expand the program to cover all sworn personnel with an additional 45 cameras. This will include detectives. It's been our experience as we've implemented this program that as detectives work in extra duty details and they actually do uniform assignments from time to time, that we're not capturing that footage, and it is a difficult thing to explain from a perspective of transparency. So we're seeking to expand the program to include these 45 cameras and all the ancillary equipment and software licenses that come with it. The program, or to implement this, we'll smooth it in so that it marries up with our previous agreement. So it's a 44-month agreement of $93,768.75 per year for the next 5 years. Pay for a portion of this, the $40,455 out of our federal forfeiture spending, and $53,314 out of a special program we have for technology for the first year, and then roll it into our operating budget if you so approve it. Be more than happy to answer any questions.
Questions for the chief? Councilmember Beckman.
Just one real quick one, and this seems silly, but, so you have them on all sworn officers, but it's like not on undercover people, right? Undercover officers aren't gonna be
It would
wearing
be a
one?
giveaway.
Yeah. I mean, so not that, right?
Yeah, we wouldn't discuss our techniques about how we do our undercover operations, but
Okay.
we take care of stuff like that in many ways.
And then one little question too, and I know there's a time pressure, but can you share with me, probably again, you have a DUI room with a camera, and is this part of, yeah, and 5 interview rooms? How is a DUI room different from an interview room?
So a DUI room is a long hallway with a big line drawn in the middle of the floor, and you do 9 steps and turn around and come back and all the other stuff to complete.
Okay.
So it's actually generally in your booking areas. So we have one in our booking cell area near the toxivisor instrument that you blow into. The interview rooms are upstairs in the criminal investigations division. They're, sterile 10 by 10 rooms with a desk and 2 chairs, and pretty basic.
Probably good I don't know that firsthand, but thank you
Yes,
for
yes.
letting me know.
Good to know. You're welcome to come by and visit if you'd ever like to see it.
Consent?
Yep.
7.1.
Award a construction contract to TLC Diversified of Palmetto, Florida for the 2021 annual water and reclaimed water repair and improvements in the amount of $6 million for an initial 1-year term with an option for 3 1-year renewals of a unit price based for a total contract value of $24 million, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute the same. Mr. Brown.
Good morning, my name is Jeremy Brown, Engineering Manager. The purpose of this contract is to provide supplemental construction services to the Public Utilities Department. There are 2 main components. The first is to provide emergency and non-emergency repairs and maintenance to the existing city water and reclaimed water distribution systems. The second is to assist with critical main replacements that have been identified in our water master plan and the future reclaimed water master plan. With that, I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Any questions, Vice Mayor?
How much more capacity does our reclaimed water system have before we reach a critical mass of not enough reclaimed water to serve
Well, right now, we still
areas
discharge.
we've got it installed?
We still discharge to the bay. And there's a Senate Bill 64 that was passed that's basically eliminating that. So we're gonna be maximizing, we're looking to maximize the usage, actually. We just started a project to do that.
Other questions? Councilmember Beckman.
So this is, 6 million is just for repair, not expansion, but we do need to expand because we can't discharge anymore, correct?
The 6 million can be for either or. They can be
Okay.
for repairs or for, for instance, the county may want to install a stormwater system. There's a small little main that needs to get moved. We'll be able to use this contract if Public Utilities is not available.
Okay, so it can include some expansion.
Sure.
And then, when's the date when we can't discharge anymore?
It's 2031, 2032. My apologies. Thank you, Rich.
Thanks.
Other questions? Consent?
Yes.
7.2.
Thank you.
Approve the conveyance of utility easement to Spectrum Sunshine State LLC for the installation, operation, and maintenance of electric facilities at the city's State Street Park, whose address is 1971 North Betty Lane, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute the same. Mr. Mahoney.
Morning, Council. Tom Honey, Engineering Department. This is a condition of the vacated State Street that abuts the State Street Park. The item will provide for existing utilities, an easement for the existing utilities that are within that right of way. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Consent?
Yes.
7.3.
Approve the conveyance of a utility easement to Frontier Florida LLC for the installation, operation, and maintenance of communication facilities at the city's State Street Park, whose address is 1971 North Betty Lane, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute the same.
Each utility is requiring their own easement for their personal utilities, so this is the same item. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Consent?
Yes.
7.3. I just did that. 7.4. I mean 8.1. Good God.
Approve a renewal of license and maintenance services agreement with Environmental Systems Research Institute, or ESRI, of Redwood, California, for mapping and land management software licensing and maintenance in the amount not to exceed $285,000, which includes a contingency pursuant to Clearwater Code, single source, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute the same. Mr. Mayor.
Mayor, council members, Dan Mayer, IT Director. ESRI is our land management. This provides all the base mapping for our engineering and utilities group, police CAD services, and any spatial analysis we want to do. So this is our standard in this area, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Mayor?
Nope.
Consent?
Yes. Yep.
8.2.
Approve an agreement with Invoice Cloud Inc., Braintree, Mass. to provide electronic bill presentment and payment services for the City of Clearwater Utility Customer Service Department from January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2024, in accordance with the Clearwater Code of Ordinances, single source, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute the same. I think Ms. Sema is joining Mr. Mayor.
Christina Sema is with our utility customer service group. We've been using Kubra since 2018 to provide our online IVR payment services for our customers. We've had some problems with their level of support and just general satisfaction with the services they've been able to provide. We did the RFP a few years ago. Since then, Invoice Cloud has established a formal development partnership with Kayenta, who is our utility billing system. We felt comfortable recommending them as a sole source because of the integration benefits. So the new system will have some increased integration, which will provide real-time balance reporting for customers, so as soon as you pay, within minutes, your balance is updated. We have enhanced communication and mobile texting for customers, so it's more convenient for them. It's a much more developed program than what Kubra had. And overall, just the response in terms of customer satisfaction. Now, on the downside, it will cost us a little bit more in terms of convenience fee. We do only charge customers who use this service, so customers who pay by lockbox or walk-up or other services do not contribute to the payment of this convenience factor, and that's ultimately what it is. So there is a cost there. So we're going from $195 to $295, which is in accordance with what the county charges for their online payment services. Any questions?
Councilmember Albritton.
Yeah, is that, okay, so somebody wants to pay their water bill online using a credit card?
Correct.
You got the $295 fee on it?
Correct.
Do they have the option of just doing a bank?
They do. We still offer several free options. So 68% of our customer base pays nothing for paying their bill.
Okay.
There's lockbox, there's walk-in, and you can do auto debit. There is a portion of our customer base who don't use bank accounts, and we're sensitive to that, but we do provide zero cost payment options for them, and they can mail in a payment or obviously stop by. So we're sensitive to that. That's why we have the fee structure
So is this gonna be I mean, to the customer, they're not gonna really see they're not gonna have to re-put on something online. This will just come in and kind of replace it without having to
Yes, it'll be a new face for them, but it's similar to the services they use. We just think better.
Yeah, so if they're on auto pay already, does it?
If they're on direct debit, meaning debiting your bank account, it is zero impact. And so.
Okay, good.
And the $2.95 convenience fee, is that covering our merchant services fee for using a credit card?
Yeah, they pay that. That's part of what they have to cover.
Who? The
Invoice
customer?
Cloud. Yes. No, Invoice Cloud charges the customer because they have to pay the merchant fee.
So that's in addition to the $2.95?
No, that comes out of the $2.95.
Okay.
So the $2.95 minus the merchant fees is what they make.
I thought some of the merchant fees were much higher than that.
They can be depending on the amount of the bill.
Okay.
It's a percentage based on the size of the bill. The vast majority of the bills are under $250, so it's a small fee, percentage fee.
Mm-hmm. Consent?
Yes.
Councilmember
Yeah.
Beckman?
That $2.95 is high. You know, I mean, if we have 68% of our residents pay nothing on top of their bill because they have, you know, they get it in on, they mail it, or they have a direct deposit or automatic debit, it's our lowest income people that this affects. Don't you think, more than likely?
No, I think
right?
the lowest income people pay in person.
Do you?
Yes.
So it's not the lowest income people that are waiting and paying it trying to pay it last minute with a credit card or by phone or something?
There are some. We have not done a demographic profile of our late payers. I suppose we could. The question has been asked, but it hasn't been researched. But we get a lot of walk-in customers that pay in cash, and that typically is representative of your lowest income.
Okay. And then, you know, I've heard from residents, you talk about and have had, we weren't completely satisfied with the firm we had, but some people had said that they were receiving their bills late and didn't have enough time to get them mailed back, and I guess they went to Tampa. Are these guys going to Massachusetts, or how is, because they're located in Massachusetts, are the bills?
This isn't the bill printer.
Okay.
So this is a different
It's just
vendor.
processing.
This is strictly online.
Okay.
So, with our current provider, we send them a file. They know everyone's balance. They accept payments against those balances, and they send the file back to us, and we update the database. With the new provider, they'll have integration into the system, so when you call to say, what do I owe, they'll check the live database, you'll pay that, and then they'll update it. This is all electronic. There is another vendor that does the bill printing and delivery. So yes, that's a separate issue, and that contract will come up again, so we can discuss that.
Mr. Dove, do you have something to add to this conversation?
I think one of the primary objectives is the customer service improvement, real-time evidence of bill payment, which right now the utility customer service does not have. That creates a lot of issues. They send out obviously thousands of bills, and so this will solve that problem, which has been a long-term one for UCS.
Vice Mayor?
I'm a little confused. If I put a check in the mail to pay my bill, there's no additional fee.
No.
But if I walk in and pay at the counter with a check, there's according to the way I'm reading this, there's a $2.95 convenience fee if you're paying with a check.
It's only online.
Electronic check. So an electronic online transaction is charged the fee.
So if I have a bill pay and I've got City of Clearwater utilities, I've got to pay $2.95 additional?
There are multiple online. So you can use a credit card, you can use a debit card, or you can do direct debit. So the credit card and the debit card is an individual transaction that you authorize, and that charges.
But if it's coming directly out of
direct
my
debit,
account.
we verify with your bank. It comes right out of your account. There's zero overhead for a direct debit.
Consent?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
10.1,
9.1.
9.1. Hoping to get out of here someday.
Authorize a partial amendment and assignment of a site license agreement between the City of Clearwater and L3 Harris Technologies, a successor in interest to the MA-COM private radio systems on behalf of its affiliates and subsidiaries and the State of Florida Department of Management Services, where the partial assignment and amendment is agreed to by the City of Clearwater, a municipal corporation of the State of Florida, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute the same. Sorry, some of these things.
Mr. Gloucester.
Good morning, Earl Gloucester, Director of Solid Waste General Services. Said all that just to say that we're replacing L3 Harris as the leasee on our North Tower with the State of Florida. The State of Florida has been in partnership with L3 Harris for a number of years, and they've just decided to reverse the relationship. It's just an exercise on the contract. We agreed to them doing it, and this is all it is.
Any questions for Mr. Gloucester?
Nope.
Consent?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. 10.1.
Approve an agreement with the Pinellas County Supervisor of Elections to conduct the city's March 15, 2022 general election in the amount of $141,532.88 and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Council members, in your agenda pack, you had a copy of the invoice as well as the contract. This is strictly just to conduct our elections, as we have historically contracted with the Pinellas County, so it's just to conduct our general elections. I do want to speak to the cost increase. It's a little much higher than in the past. Our last election was approximately $45,000. This now includes, because of COVID, there were a couple of changes that the Supervisor of Elections implemented. One is making sure that the costs were appropriate for the time. It was over 20 years since the costs were increased, so now we are paying for postage, actual postage rate, as well as the poll workers. So one of the things that they ran into with COVID was volunteers and not being able to confirm those workers. So now we are paying for those poll workers.
So if we ever decide to have a special referendum, this is
the cost. If we
this is staggering increase.
It is. It's almost 3 times. If we were to coincide, like for instance, our next election that coincides with the presidential primary, the cost is very different. The approximate cost is about $20,000. That's the difference. So if we do a referendum in November, it'll be about $20,000 plus any advertising that would be required for our ballot questions.
Well, you don't have a choice. Consent? 11.1.
Mayor, 11.1, 11.2 are just second readings for
readings.
vacating public right-of-way.
Any questions? Anything else, Mr. Jennings?
Mayor and City Council, I just want to take the opportunity to update you and the community on a few items. I want to provide you a sidewalk update in the community. I want to especially thank engineering and parks. We have identified over 211 sidewalk issues. 83 of those sidewalks will be fixed right away beginning in January. We have 97 sidewalks that are being impacted by trees. And so Parks and Recreation staff will be notifying residents in those areas with door hangers in order to let them know that more than likely we're going to have to remove the trees, but we want to make sure they're notified in advance. And then, of course, we would be replacing trees. We're also working on a new policy that will really limit new trees that have a non-invasive root structure adjacent to the public right-of-way, and that will hopefully reduce. And we expect to have all of the sidewalks completed within the next 4 to 6 months, even the ones that are being impacted. And we also, just as an aside, have 35 broken curbs that we're also focused on. So all of that work should be done within the next 4 to 6 weeks. And again, I just want to thank both of those departments. As you know, the mayor and City Attorney Margolis and I met with Mr. Miscavige few weeks ago, and I'm pleased to report to you that I've had multiple conversations now with Mr. Miscavige. The conversations have been honest, they've been direct, and very productive. We are working on a plan to work more collaboratively on the Cleveland Street corridor, which will lead to, in my opinion, greater economic development investment. Mr. Miscavige has repeatedly promised a full commitment to work with the city to align with the goals to make our downtown more vibrant and active. As a new person who is really not encumbered with the past, I believe it is time to put the acrimony of the past behind us, to work with a real estate development partner, the church, to maximize the vision of our downtown. I understand the anger and distrust that has been created over the years, but in order for the city to move forward, we must develop a partnership with the Church of Scientology, as was stated in the 2014 Urban Land Institute study, which was commissioned by the city. I am not naive to the issues, but I know if an entity that owns portions of property in our downtown came to us wanting to work in partnership, we would jump at that opportunity. I am only discussing the opportunity to work on improving our downtown and not a judgment on the church, as I personally know through my own faith has taught me that I am imperfect to pass judgment on anyone. So shortly, I hope to bring to the council a proposal for your consideration that will enable the city to work collaboratively with the church on their real estate holdings for the maximum benefit of the city. I also want to just give you a brief update on our efforts to develop a new city hall. After conversations with the mayor and each one of you, within the next 2 months, staff will bring forward a proposal with a financing package for your consideration to build a new city hall on city-owned land adjacent to the Municipal Services Building at the corner of South Myrtle and Pierce. By locating City Hall in close proximity to the MSB and Police Department, we will be able to streamline services for our residents and be a more efficient government. Tonight, there's a strategic planning process, Community Forum 1, Session B. It's from 7 to 8:30, which is virtually. Their information, be able to connect to Zoom, is on our website. I also wanted just to mention that today is Denise Sanderson's birthday, but also our very own Joelle Castelli is celebrating a significant birthday, which I will leave that to her to explain. And then finally, I want to just wish everyone a very Merry Christmas and a very safe start to the new year.
Thank you, Mr. Jennings. 30s are your great years, Joelle.
Yeah.
So, you know.
It's downhill from here.
Do we have an estimate of the cost of the sidewalk repairs?
I don't have an estimate with me, but I can get that for you.
And when we put a door hanger on a resident's house, are we talking about cutting down the trees on their property? And do we
No,
have...
it's within the right of way.
Okay, only within the right of way. Any other questions for Mr. Jennings?
I appreciate the update.
Mr. Margolis, anything?
I have 2 items. They kind of bleed over between city attorney's reports and new business, but we can just kind of talk about it now, I believe. The first is with the opioid task force relating to Pinellas County. So this council previously approved an interlocal agreement with the county and several cities in Pinellas County to guide the disposition of funds relating to opioid settlements. As part of that interlocal agreement, each of the participating cities, including the city of Clearwater, gets to appoint one person to this committee. This committee is framed as an advisory committee, but they actually have pretty significant authority when it comes to the disposition of funds. That recommendation that this committee makes is binding throughout the county unless it is overruled by the county commission by a supermajority of the county. And so one thing for this council to consider, perhaps at a future workshop, is who you'd like to appoint to serve on that committee. It could be a council member, could be a member of Mr. Jennings' leadership team. I would not recommend a citizen, given the amount of control this committee is going to have over public funds. So that's something to discuss in the future. The second item, I guess I'll save for new business.
Okay.
Sometimes it's hard to distinguish between city attorney's reports versus new business. They kind
Well,
of
you're
help each
really
other.
not new business. It's new business basically from council members. But-
Okay.
So why don't you just go ahead with your business?
Sounds good.
Then we'll get to our business.
It sounds good. So the one thing that I'd like to discuss at a future meeting would be the implementation of a potential council rule relating to remote attendance, particularly in the age of COVID, where a lot of things have changed quickly in the world. We know that we went through a period of time where the governor was allowing remote attendance at public meetings that ended fairly quickly. The current status, meaning the kind of informal practice that this council has had under Ms. Aiken, for many years, is that no one could really attend a formal council meeting remotely, in other words, telephonically. However, there had been circumstances in which someone could attend a work session telephonically or remotely. It's up to this council to decide whether to implement a rule relating to that or not. Whether you'd like that rule to be firm or whether you'd like it to be flexible is completely up to you. There are only a couple restrictions in state law, but not very many. It is, however, my recommendation to council that this council consider what you'd like to do, so that way everyone has good expectations to guide council in the future. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Margolis. Councilmember Albritton, PSTA Forward Pinellas.
Okay, PSTA report, I'll keep it brief. The biggest thing that we discussed last week was the purchase of 60 electric buses over the next 5 years. I guess about 12 years ago, maybe even a little bit longer, we got a great thing from the government, gave us funds to buy 60 buses, but we bought them all at one time, which is a problem, especially when they come due to be, PST's done a real good job of actually extending the life from, the government says 500,000 to 800,000 by replacing the motors. We have a very great shop, a bunch of people that go through the buses and keep them running. But the 60 electric buses over 5 years is a good start. They'll operate system-wide with the first of the 60 new buses expected to hit the road in 2024. PSTA already operates 6 all-electric green buses. And we're determined to deliver the promise of zero emissions fleet by 2050. Each electric bus is recharged one of 3 ways: overnight charging, regenerative braking, and online charging stations, en route charging stations, loops under the asphalt. The battery range averages 200 miles or about 14 hours of operating time on a single charge. And we'll save about $20,000 a year in diesel fuel costs for each bus. In January 2021, the PSC board adopted the Sustainable Strategic Plan that provided a roadmap to promote the agency's sustainability goals. And we have a commitment to sustainability. It has the the PMO, the Project Management Office, exploring opportunities to increase the agency's use of renewable resources to meet the growing energy needs. PMO is exploring opportunities to partner with Duke Energy to consider solar photovoltaic panels at the PSTA headquarters. And solar energy has the potential to support the PSTA facility and e-bus fleet, both current and future, while all reducing the authority's carbon footprint. And that's it.
All righty. New business? Any items that folks would like on? Councilmember Beckman.
Yeah, I just was thinking, like, maybe in January, if we could talk about, as the legislative session starts, and I applaud Joelle and our communications team for developing that legislative priorities page, but talk about how frequently it'll be updated and what we can do to either track resident engagement or encourage resident engagement. And then I was thinking about our state lobbyist team. Like, what are we paying them for? I think you sent me the contract and stuff early when I got elected, and I was gonna search for it. But can we ask them to maybe hold a kind of a town hall meeting, something like that in early January or mid or late January? The session starts January 11th, to just kind of educate residents about what goes on at the state level, how their voice is important, you know, and what they're doing for us.
I would say a town hall meeting may be outside of their scope of services, but that is something that I can approach them and see if they would be willing. I am working with them right now to see when they can come to council to do a pre-session update, and that's something that can be discussed then. In terms of updating the website, I will be providing public communications as those status requests or action requests from the league come up, or when our lobbyists tell us of something. So remember, we're going to try to be as strategic as possible based on our recommendations from our lobbyists in terms of when we want the public engaged. But I will provide an update to public communications, and whenever there is a request for action, I think the best way would be going not so much through the city website, but posting those requests via social media. And I think that's what their plan is as well.
And then, you know, when we adopted our priorities, our legislative priorities, I mean, they're kind of broadly stated. So there's a net metering bill that's going to be coming up that I think is pretty detrimental. And I've got documents from 3 different, you know, nonprofit groups from all sides of the political spectrum that I was going to share with you today, because you had sent something out last week about. And, but I'm wondering, is that just your judgment to share that? Is it a consensus with the council, or how do those?
If let's say members of council have an item that they want staff to really provide some information to the public, then it's really a consensus of council. It's not really just up to me. So unless it's something that the city manager or if the city attorney sees something that feels, okay, this really elevates that point. But typically when it comes to that level of, if you want a city's official position on an item, it needs to come from council.
Okay, but to push it out to residents, can that just be an agreement during weekly meetings, or does it have to be an agreement from the?
It depends. If you're stating sharing information from other organizations, I think that's really more collegial, because it may not necessarily give staff the time to review the information, to see what those organizations are providing, to see if that's really something that the city really should take a position on.
Okay, thank you.
One thing I'd like to talk about in the future is we do have a policy for recognizing sports achievements generally. And we've never done anything for Bobby Fink, who won a gold medal and is a Clearwater resident. And also the Calvary girls volleyball team has won the state championship. And I don't think the policy talks about public versus private schools. And it's something I want to clarify. And I know there's issues that can come with that, but it's something I'd like to talk about in the future. And I know we would have to take the bombers down because we're only allowed 2 recognitions on the causeway. Are you here to add to something to that? Because I didn't tell you I was going to bring it up.
I was coming to tell you that we do have a Bobby Fink sign up, and there are 4 signs up now.
I have not. Where are they? They must be minute.
There's the Lightning, the Bucks, the Bombers, and the Bobby Fink sign up, and they're all in the same area on different poles right at the causeway.
I was told by somebody in Parks and Rec we were only allowed 2 by FDOT.
That's forgiveness, not permission.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just gave it away.
I'm sure they're watching. Only if they have insomnia.
I'm sure they know.
Okay, we're adjourned.